Chapter 1363. Xiao Han's recovery. On this day, it was drizzling and dark clouds covered the sky. Di Luo Bay fell into complete darkness. Reason and humanity were crazily suppressed, and conscience was swallowed up. Killing and wailing played the song of the dead. Fragile lives shrank in the corner and shivered. After the cruel competition of 1 in 100, of the tens of thousands of martial practitioners who escaped death and broke through the sea demon's encirclement and came to Di Luo Bay, 30% of them died today. Under the Divine Palace Order, within the 3-month survival period, there was a cultivation method in the warrior ruins, and everyone had to become as strong as possible. But in the end, only 1,000 people were chosen as disciples. During this period, the candidates not only faced hunger, but also killing from all sides. The enemies could be strangers or they could be the people closest to them. There was no family, no love, no friendship, and no distinction between master and servant. Emperors were emotionless. If they wanted to be one of the 1,000 lucky people, the only thing they could do was to live. They had to use all means to live, and use all means to live. When this rule was announced, Qin Hao did not even care about the herbs. He rushed straight to the cave and left at the first moment, away from this inhumane place. He knew that the moment the divine sword flew away, the warriors around Di Luo Bay were no longer human, but a group of demons. Leaving was the best choice. No matter how strong they were, without the support of Yuan Qi, they would be chopped to death in an instant. Among the candidates, Qin Hao did not know how many of them did not have the Divine Palace Order. But in his team, everyone had one. He saved the Divine Palace Order and avoided the most violent first round of killing. Sometimes, not fighting was considered a victory. Following the direction of Zheng Qingqi's group, Qin Hao and the others went deep into the eastern mountains. They would meet up with Zheng Qingqi first. As for the ruins, they did not have time to care about them. There were many ruins around Di Luo Bay. According to the messenger, the more obvious the location of the ruins, the less valuable they were. On the contrary, the harder to find ruins were more valuable. In this month, Zheng Qingqi and the others found many ruins. After meeting up, they set up camp in a hidden ruin and focused on cultivation. On the road, bloody fights could be seen everywhere. There were even some warriors who shouted, "Grandson, don't run!" while stabbing their long sabers into the bodies of the people around them, crushing their internal organs. At this moment, the elders that had escorted their descendants all tore off their disguises and returned to their white-haired appearances. Their appearances that were smeared with blood greatly resembled devils. In the face of the cries for help, Qin Hao and the others did not waver. This was not the time to be kind. If they went, the people who cried for help might use their weapons to chop off their heads in the next second. Qin Hao's team had quite a number of people, so the weaker forces naturally didn't dare to disturb them. The journey was quite peaceful. Actually, they were not the only ones who left the fallen Emperor Bay. Anyone with a brain would avoid this chaos at the first moment. In the western region, Ning Tianxing and Mo Xian fought their way into the valley. In the north, Xianyuan Jie, Changhelo, Murong Zijuan, and Qi Yuan fled into the forest under the protection of a large number of imperial death servants. Scorching Sun Temple, Wuk Sword Sect, Arhut Palace, and many other forces were also looking for a place to settle down with their injuries. No one would risk their lives to fight this group of lunatics at this time. Before sunset, Qin Hao finally met up with Zheng Qingqi, who was returning. Then, Zheng Qingqi led the way and everyone entered a hidden ruin. Crazy, they've all gone crazy. Big brother Qingqi, you don't know this, but when I came here, I saw a grandfather chasing after his grandson. There was also a nephew who chopped off his uncle's head. Qi Xiaoguo described vividly. Everyone was silent. In order to get the Divine Palace token, they had disregarded their family. The temptation of a 9-star great emperor was really irresistible. But thinking about it carefully, there was nothing strange about it. Even in the outside world, clansmen would fight for their own interest. entering the divine palace to cultivate as a 9-star great emperor. If in the outside world, it would be no pity to bury the entire clan. This ruin is 30 miles away from Di Luo Bay, at the bottom of the cliff. It will not be discovered for a while, Jing Qinqi said. Only now did he understand that in the large number of ruins surrounding Di Luo Bay, there were cultivation methods for warriors to improve their cultivation. If he had known this, he would have directly entered the cultivation and wasted a month's time. Safety first, it's a blessing that everyone is fine. Qin Hao smiled and patted Jing Qingqi's shoulder. Previously, they were shocked by the rumors of Di Luo Bay and did not dare to enter the ruin. Although it was a waste of time, it was not necessarily a bad thing. At least the team did not lose any members. Next, let's see what mysteries are hidden in this ruin. Jing Qinqi took out a match and lit a pot of butter to illuminate the bottom of the cliff. The light in the pot was not strong. Hidden under the cliff, it was difficult to be discovered by outsiders. With the help of the light, everyone could see clearly that there were several patterns engraved on the stone wall of the cliff. There were 4 in total. After looking at them, it gave people a feeling that the patterns were moving. There are 4 kinds of martial arts techniques, Qin Hao said lightly. After a glance, he lost interest. Martial arts techniques were not important to him. In his previous life, he had read a group of books. There were all kinds of martial arts techniques for defense, movement, attack, and so on. There were tens of thousands of scrolls in his mind, and the level of each martial art technique was not lower than the earth level. Not to mention all these, just the immortal samsara technique of the divine level was enough to make Qin Hao have no need to waste his energy on other martial arts technique. Of course, the martial arts techniques on the stone wall were still very precious compared to the outside world. After all, it was left by the cultivators of the divine palace. And Qin Hao could also see that the cultivation of the martial arts techniques left behind was of the emperor level. The first picture is a set of super fist techniques to train the physical body. Little Melon, it is very suitable for you. The second picture is a set of primordial qi operation technique. If I'm not wrong, according to its operation path, the speed of gathering qi will be reduced by 20% compared to others. You can consider whether you want to practice it or not. My personal suggestion is that you can practice it. Qin Hao's eyesight was so sharp that he could see the essence of the stone wall's techniques at a glance. He paused, pointed to the third picture and continued, "This is a set of halberd techniques. Unfortunately, there is no halberd expert among us, so it can be ignored." As for the fourth picture, Qin Hao frowned. He could not see through it. It was engraved with a person playing the zither. There was only one person playing the zither quietly. There was no chant or melody. It seemed that only by observing and figuring out the artistic conception could one understand the true meaning of the picture. Qin Hao did not understand the zither, and he would not waste his energy trying to figure out the artistic conception of the zither master. For him, the fourth picture was useless. Of course, everyone present did not understand music. Even if they did, it would be difficult to understand the artistic conception, so they all chose to give up. Tangung, by Shoutong, we will practice the method of gathering qi. Zhou Wudao sat cross-legged and stared at the second picture intently. Tangung and Bai Shoutong did the same. Although they were still unable to use their primordial qi in this place, they could still guide a wisp of it to circulate in their bodies. Yi Yao, Keir, the disciples of Knight Luo Palace, Jing Qinqi, and the others also chose to practice the method of gathering qi of the divine palace cultivators. Xiaogua scratched his head and sat in front of the first picture to comprehend the opponent's fist intent. Only Qin Hao had nothing to do. He took Xiao Han's hand and avoided the crowd. He used his sword to cut a shallow hole in the stone wall in the distance. The two of them sat in the hole. Gradually, Xiao Han fell asleep leaning on Qin Hao's shoulder. For 3 days in a row, everyone was busy cultivating. This made Qin Hao suffer. He had to catch game, shoot birds, and take care of everyone's meals. However, he also enjoyed it. But every time he went out, he always felt that there was a pair of eyes staring at him from behind. "Big brother, come and help me comprehend this fist technique." Sayogwa had lost a lot of hair and looked haggard. He had been trying to figure it out for many days and claimed that he had comprehended it, but every time he used it, he always felt that his strength was not as strong as he wished. "What's the problem?" Qin Hao asked, his gaze falling on the first picture. "The fist force I used on the stone wall is not as strong as usual. I feel like I've been deceived. Could it be that the senior who left the fist technique is making fun of us?" Sayogwa said angrily. He had tried many times. Qin Hao showed a trace of doubt. He stared at the picture seriously. In his mind, he quickly connected the movements of the stone wall and threw a punch. Boom! It shook the stone wall and the stone wall cracked. There is indeed something strange. Qin Hao gave up on comprehending the moves and struck out according to his own fist technique. Once again, he struck the stone wall, causing the stone wall to tremble and rocks to roll down. The stone wall was penetrated, leaving behind a basin-sized hole. This hit was not small and attracted everyone's attention. "Are you crazy?" Zhou Wudao jumped up and said. "It's none of your business. Go gather your qi." Qin Hao did not believe it. He punched again with the fist technique left by the Divine Illumination Palace expert. The result was the same as the first time. It only cracked the stone wall and could not compare to the power of the second punch. Where did it go wrong? Qin Hao thought. Could it be that the power of this fist technique was not reflected in the effect of the physical body, but in the primordial qi of the fist? Many of the high-level fist techniques on the continent were lethal in primordial qi. If that was the case, the picture of the fist on the stone wall should have been drawn with primordial qi. But the other party did not leave any traces of primordial qi. This meant that the power of the fist was still reflected in the physical body. Strange, it's really strange. Qin Hao gradually became interested. One punch after another, he kept practicing. He kept punching. The sound of the punches was rhythmic, making everyone around him unable to practice. In fact, Zhou Wudao and the others were not much better than Sayogwa. Once they used the qi gathering path left on the stone wall, they felt their qi and blood in their abdomens were in chaos and their internal organs were extremely uncomfortable, as if they were about to split open. They even suspected that this was not a qi gathering skill at all, but an evil skill that could cause people to go mad. 1 day, 2 days, Qin Hao seemed to have fallen into a state of madness. He completely entered a state of selflessness. Tens of thousands of holes were punched in the stone wall, and the gravel under his feet was a foot deep. It was just like when he practiced the golden finger in his rebirth. With him messing around like this, no one could calm down and practice. In the end, Zhou Wudao led Tangung and Bai Xiaotong to retreat 10 miles away. Zheng Qingqi and the other 6 also moved away. Yi Yao and a group of girls were responsible for catching small animals. Looking at the stone wall full of holes, Sayogwa was really anxious. He seriously suspected that this was not for normal people to practice, especially Qin Hao now. He had already gone mad. Big brother, you'd better not practice it. The fist technique is a lie. If you practice it again, you will become a madman outside. Sayogwa stopped him. He was very worried. If Qin Hao went mad, it would be very terrible. After all, a mad Qin Hao was comparable to an army. More than a dozen people couldn't control him. No, the masters of the Divine Palace have no reason to lie. There must be a mystery. Qin Hao turned a blind eye to Sayogwa's dissuasion. He was like a strong bull that did not know fatigue, still punching. Alas! Sayogwa was so angry that he stomped his feet. He gritted his teeth and led Xiao Han over. If there was anyone who could stop Qin Hao, it would be Sister Xiao Han. Xiao Han's eyes were dull and had not yet recovered. But when she saw Qin Hao punching like a madman and the cliff was about to be knocked down by the man, her face showed a trace of trembling, and her frowning eyebrows showed a distressed expression. However, she did not stop him. It seemed that subconsciously she acquiesced to Qin Hao's practice. What was even more strange was that Xiao Han's eyes also fell on the mural. "Sister Xiao Han, quickly pull my big brother away." Xiaogua was really anxious now. He didn't wake Qin Hao up. Could it be that Sister Xiao Han had gone mad? 1. 2. A clear female voice broke the atmosphere at this moment. When this voice rang out, it seemed to penetrate the whole world. Qin Hao's fists suddenly stopped. His neck twisted and his eyes widened in shock. He slowly looked at the woman beside him. The voice that was imprinted in the depths of his memory just now was clearly Han Er's voice. 1. 2. Without waiting for Qin Hao's confirmation, Xiao Han shouted 2 more times. Along with this, her fingers slowly raised, moving along the first picture to the second picture, as if to convey that the 2 pictures were connected. "Xiao Han, you." Qin Hao's mind was blank. He forgot all about the fist technique. All that was left in his eyes was the person he loved. Xiaogua covered his mouth with both hands. At this moment, he also forgot about the rock wall. 1, 2. Together. Xiao Han continued. Her finger moved from the second picture to the first picture. She turned her head and smiled sweetly at Qin Hao. In an instant, Qin Hao's eyes were moist. He wanted to rush up and hug her tightly, but he restrained his impulse. His throat trembled, and he nodded to show that he understood. "Okay, I understand. The fist technique of the first picture needs the second picture's qi gathering path to instill power. Are you going to tell me this? Is that right?" Hee. Xiao Han tilted her head and laughed. "Yes. Sister Xiao Han has recovered. Sister Xiao Han has recovered." Xiaogua shouted and ran out in tears. Education 123 Literature Network. Chapter 1364. I grant you a role. Xiao Han regained her intelligence. Hearing the news, the team members quickly gathered. Xiao cried for a long time, tears of joy uncontrollably. Qin Hao comforted her and took Xiao Han to rest. Han had just regained her consciousness, so it was not good for her to overwork herself. When she talked to Xiao she could not even speak a complete sentence. She could only make intermittent babbling sounds like a child. It would take a long time for her to fully recover. But today was a good sign. Next, Qin Hao let Xiaogua practice the fist moves of the first picture according to Han Er's method and the qi gathering path of the second picture. At the beginning, the effect was not obvious, but gradually, the power was revealed. Han had always been smart and her deduction ability was very strong. She taught herself the fleeting sword and imitated Qin Hao's water wind steps, which was enough to see her wisdom. If not for her reminder, Qin Hao would not have thought that the 2 pictures needed to be combined to display their power. According to this inference, the 4 pictures were a whole. The halberd art and the zither art also needed the assistance of the qi gathering technique. However, no one tried to figure out the 3rd and 4th pictures. In the remaining days, Zhou Wudao and the others worked hard to cultivate the qi gathering technique. Now, everyone completely understood that the 4 pictures were arranged incorrectly. In fact, the first picture should be the qi gathering technique, and the second picture should be the fist moves. With such a confusion, it was obvious that the senior who left behind the books intended to test the ability of the younger generation. On this day, Qin Hao stood in front of the cliff. The qi in his body followed a strange path and finally gathered in the center of his fist. At this moment, his fist shone with a dazzling light, as if the light was bursting out from his fingers. The power in his body surged. His fist was like a stormy sea. With a clang, it hit the stone wall. Boom! The cliff trembled. Dozens of 10-meter-long spider webs spread under Qin Hao's fist. It was very frightening. When he moved his fist away, the The rock layers at the spot where his fist had struck the rock wall began to fall off, revealing an imprint as deep as a water tank. So strong. Xiaogua was shocked. Di Luobei couldn't use Yuan Qi and couldn't summon a source spirit. Affected by the terrain, a martial artist's strength and speed would be weakened. However, Qin Hao's punch had shaken the entire cliff. It was comparable to the impact of a saint's vital qi attack in the outside world. It was hard to imagine that if he left the fallen Emperor Bei and used his fist technique, he would be able to kill people in the same realm with just the wind from his fist. This was without using his source spirit or origin energy. I finally understand. Qin Hao heaved a sigh of relief. The qi gathering technique left on the wall could quickly stack one's strength in one's body and converge it to a single point, preventing the yuan qi from leaking out. Then, one could use one's fists and kicks to attack the enemy from the inside out, just like hitting a cow from a mountain. When he punched out, all the power in his body suddenly concentrated on a single point, and the destructive power it produced was simply terrifying. It's far more than that. Senior has carved 9 explosive points: feet, knees, hands, waist, back, and heart. These positions are the 9 major acupoints of the human body. Every time an acupoint is opened, the corresponding body part can obtain a super explosive power. I have only opened the major acupoint on my right fist. Qin Hao looked at Xiaogua. If the 9 major acupoints were all opened, the body as a whole would transform, and it would be extremely terrifying. And the effect of opening the 9 acupoints was definitely not reflected in the fist technique. The fist technique left by Senior should have maximized the potential of the power of the 9 palaces. Similarly, the halberd technique left on the wall should be the most suitable for the explosive power of the 9 palaces. And the 4th picture was to teach the zither master how to adjust the power of the 9 palaces and use it in the zither technique. Unfortunately, Qin Hao didn't know the zither, but he could practice the halberd technique a little. The halberd technique and the spear technique had many similar moves and had the same origin. Qin Hao also knew the spear. The 4 technique diagrams on the wall could be called treasures. Qin Hao had seriously underestimated them. Based on his current situation, after opening the right fist palace, the power of his fist had almost doubled. If he opened his source soul, combined the inextinguishable samsara technique, and ignited the power of the dragon, even he felt terrified just thinking about it. Perhaps at that time, surpassing a heavenly cycle realm cultivator and killing an emperor realm cultivator with a single punch would be enough. Even if he couldn't use his source soul in fallen Emperor Bei, the power of the right fist palace was still very terrifying after opening it. It was very suitable for actual combat. However, it wasn't easy to completely open the power of the 9 palaces. Qin Hao's body was tyrannical, and the toughness of his meridians was much stronger than a martial artist like Xiaogua, who was born with divine strength, not to mention a cultivator like Zhou Wudao, who was skilled in vitality. Qin Hao had suffered a lot just by opening the power of one palace. This kind of torturous cultivation method was even more difficult for Zhou Wudao and the others, and the pain they experienced was also more cruel. However, after seeing Qin Hao's results, how could they be willing to miss it? No matter how painful it was, they had to endure it. The power of the 9 palaces was not only suitable for the stone wall's fist technique and halberd technique, it was also suitable for the martial artist's moves. When the 9 palaces were opened, the physical body would transform. For more than a month, below the cliff, everyone cultivated tirelessly, forgetting to eat and sleep. They endured the painful baptism again and again. After Qin Hao opened the right fist palace, he didn't continue cultivating. He spent more time with Xiaohan. However, he had memorized all the technique diagrams to open the other 8 palaces, including the halberd technique carved on the stone wall and the zither master's concept diagram. He thought that when he returned to Western Liang, he could teach Qin Yun the halberd technique. Qin Yun's appearance was similar to Qin Hao's. He was very tall and had a gentle appearance. However, when Qin Yun was immersed in battle, he was even crazier than Qin Hao. What he was good at was the halberd. As for the Zither Master's diagram, Qin Hao felt that it was a pity. In his impression, none of his friends were good at music. The Zither Master's diagram in his memory would definitely be different from the one on the stone wall. The concept diagram would be very important. A month later, apart from Xiaohan, everyone else in the team had opened one palace. Zhou Wudao, who had a better aptitude, had opened 3 palaces. Qin Hao didn't cultivate much. Instead, he spent more time with Xiaohan. However, he had also opened 3 palaces, which made everyone think that he was a freak. During this time, Xiaogua had also broken through from the 8th level Venerate realm to the 9th level Yuan Venerate. After all, the stone wall's fist technique didn't just reflect destructive power. It also greatly changed a martialist's physical body. Xiaogua was a martial soul cultivator, while Zhou Wudao was more inclined to improving his Yuan Qi. If the two of them were to compete in Yuan Qi destructive power, even 5 Xiaoguas wouldn't be a match for Zhou Wudao. However, Yuan Qi couldn't be used in Fallen Emperor Bei. Zhou Wudao had opened 3 palaces, so he might not necessarily be a match for Xiaogua's 2 palaces. After all, Xiaogua's physical body was stronger. As time passed, the cultivation activity below the cliff gradually attracted other omens. Many people joined the cultivation team. Qin Hao felt that it was time for them to leave. The 4 wall diagrams had been left behind by the seniors of the sacred palace. The essence of martial arts didn't belong to anyone. They didn't have the right to take it for themselves, nor would they deliberately destroy it out of jealousy. As for whether others could cultivate it successfully, that would depend on their luck. After all, the 4 diagrams were arranged incorrectly. Furthermore, not everyone was suitable to cultivate the 9-palace qi gathering technique. Generally speaking, geniuses with great aptitude wouldn't be able to open the first palace without 7 or 8 days. Zhou Wudao was one such example. Zhou Wudao had once been unable to bear the pain and had almost given up. If Qin Hao hadn't succeeded, he would have thought that it was a scam. Therefore, Qin Hao wasn't optimistic about the other omens. These people only wanted to increase their strength quickly. If they couldn't suffer enough, they wouldn't receive the corresponding rewards. Hong long long long, the earth trembled. On this day, the sound of the sky collapsing came from the north of the cliff. Immediately, a beam of fire shot into the sky. It was vast and endless, causing a natural phenomenon. This sudden phenomenon instantly attracted the attention of many omen seekers. What happened there? Zheng Qingqi was surprised. The aura of fire. Qin Hao had the Red Lotus Overlord fire in his body, so his perception of fire was very strong. He led the crowd and said, "Let's go and see." If they guessed correctly, someone must have touched a large relic. It just so happened that in this relic, there were important treasures for fire-based warriors. Zhou Wudao reluctantly looked back at the stone wall. He really wanted to destroy the stone wall. If someone learned the 9-palace qi-gathering technique, wouldn't it be very dangerous? He licked the corner of his mouth and decided to forget it. Qin Hao wasn't afraid of others learning it, so he should be more generous. After all, there were very few people in the world who were as talented as him. Soon, everyone arrived at the source of the earthquake. Along the way, a large number of omens also came. The scale of the relic was obviously not small. The messenger of the divine palace said that the larger the relic, the stronger the cultivation method hidden. Of course, not all cultivation methods were suitable for warriors. Only by finding someone's strong points could one achieve twice the result with half the effort. Even so, many people still came. After Qin Hao arrived, he saw a dilapidated palace in front of him. Collapsed huge stone pillars by the roadside were engraved with profound flame patterns. Obviously, this was a palace related to fire. and the beam of fire inside must be extremely precious to fire-based cultivators. Unfortunately, there were a lot of people here, and it was not peaceful. In front of the palace, a group of warriors blocked the entrance, preventing others from entering. Everyone, we found this sacred fire relic first. It has nothing to do with you. Please go back. A young man in a yellow robe said coldly. Behind him stood several cultivators in the same clothes. This group of people had arrogant expressions. They were Qin Hao's old acquaintances. Just by looking at the marks on their bodies, one could guess who they were. Blazing Sun Temple. Xiaogua frowned, staring at the chests of the young warriors, where a cluster of sacred fire was depicted. It was the symbol of Blazing Sun Temple in the southern region. There was no need to guess. Yu Qianyang was most likely already cultivating in the relic. Many omens wanted to enter to take a look, but the door was controlled by the temple disciples. Moreover, the sense of nobility made other omens not dare to intrude. Do you know this group of guys? Zhou Wudao asked. Well, I've dealt with them before. The guys with flames embroidered on their chests are all proud people, especially their senior brother, who is known as the invincible killer of the East Continent, Qin Hao said coldly. Bullshit. Zhou Wudao was enraged by this sentence. He shook him off and strode forward. Stop, you didn't understand what I said, did you? The young man blocking the entrance of the palace said. Take half a step forward and don't blame me for being ruthless. Swish. 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 With a burst of sword light, 7 or 8 temple disciples drew their weapons. As Yuan Qi could not be used in fallen Emperor Bei, this group of Yuan Qi cultivators was at a disadvantage. Yuan Qi cultivators were particular about comprehending the way of nature. They often had strong mental strength and weak physical bodies. Although they looked fierce, in reality, these self-proclaimed geniuses of the temple disciples were not necessarily a match for ordinary warriors. Scram. Zhou Wudao's face was cold, and only spat out one word. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1365. Translator. Naoibo Studio Editor. Naoibo Studio Meeting Little 9-inch Third Senior Brother. This guy doesn't seem easy to deal with, a disciple whispered to the leader. Eldest Senior Brother is merging with the will of the divine fire. We can't afford any mistakes. We have to stop him even if we have to die. The leader's tone was unquestionable. Then, he said to Zhou Wudao, Sir, there are many relics in Diluo Bay. Why don't you let go of one? We're all friends. We're disciples of the Scorching Sun Temple in the southern region. Can you do us a favor? I've never heard of you. Get lost. Zhou Wudao didn't care about the temple. He was enraged by the name of the assassin of the East Continent. Kid, you don't know what's good for you, a disciple of the temple said. He looked around Zhou Wudao. It turned out that he was a lone traveler. They had 7 swords. How could they be afraid of one person? Oh, so you want to bully me with your numbers? Zhou Wudao sneered. That's right. We want to bully you with our numbers. Are you angry? The disciple laughed. In that case, there's nothing to say. Zhou Wudao looked back at Qin Hao. Yes, there's indeed nothing to say. Qin Hao smiled. The leader of the temple disciples looked in the direction of the smile. He was terrified. It was Pavilion Master Shiliang. Back in Golden Light City, Qin Hao had fought against 3 people alone. Not only had he crushed Changhe and Luo, but he had also killed Xianyuan Feng in front of Xianyuan Wuying. Then, in the Battle of Feng City, he fought against the Xianyuan family's fleet alone. He was invincible under the Venerate realm. This had cast a shadow in the hearts of the martial artists in the southern region. Besides, the temple had a grudge against Qin Hao. He had imprisoned the Mina brothers and sold them in public. Now that Qin Hao was here, the leader panicked. F***CKU. Xiaogua's hand flashed. He didn't even bother to say his name. He swung the demon-subduing pestle and smashed it. The chance for revenge had finally come. At this moment, the 5 warriors of the Jing tribe and Yi Yao's 6 people also attacked. In terms of numbers, the Divine Temple was no match for the Jing clan and the Night Luo Palace. In terms of strength, Qin Hao was invincible in the Venerable Realm and could even kill emperors. How could they stop him? Clang! The leading young man's long sword came into contact with Xiaogua's large pestle. Immediately after, the sword broke, and the demon fighter smashed onto his sternum. That disciple's entire body was bent. It was not hard to imagine how powerful Xiaogua was when he had lost his Yuan Qi. The strange rules of the Di Luo Bei were simply tailor-made for Xiaogua. Of course, it was also suitable for those bald martial artists from the Arhat Palace. There was no need for Qin Hao to make a move. Everyone walked in openly, and the other envoys naturally followed them. Since there was a troublemaker taking the lead, the trouble would not fall on them anyway. In the palace, there was a circular altar, and at the center of the altar, there was a purple divine flame swaying. It was like an undying flame, and it emitted a boundless sense of divinity. The eldest disciple of the Scorching Sun Temple, Yu Qianyang, was sitting cross-legged in front of the altar. His entire spiritual will was immersed in the divine flame, trying to refine it into his body. Suddenly, a few disciples who were guarding the palace door rolled in, interrupting Yu Qianyang's cultivation. What happened? Yu Qianyang said unhappily. Then, there was no need for him to ask. Familiar faces appeared one after another. Xiaogua, who used to be called the Deputy Pavilion Master, Zheng Qinqi, the current second prince of the Empire of Jing, Yi Yao, the personal disciple of the palace master of the Night Luo Palace, and the white-haired Qin Hao who made Yu Qianyang unhappy at the Golden Light City auction ceremony. It's you. Yu Qianyang immediately stood up and was on guard. Long time no see. Qin Hao smiled innocently. Eldest senior brother, they forced their way in. We are no match for them. The young man whose sternum was caved in by Xiaogua struggled a few times, but he could not get up. Yu Qianyang's heart trembled. He hurriedly ordered people to feed his junior brother a healing pill. Then, he said with a cold face, "What do you mean?" Even though he had a grudge with Qin Hao, that was in the past. Now, everyone was gathered at Di Luo Bei. They should mind their own business. Nothing. Just come in and have a look, Qin Hao said. His eyes fell on the divine flame on the altar. After a glance, a heat quickly rose in his body. The soul of the red lotus became restless, as if eager to devour the flame in the altar. Why are you talking nonsense with them? We just want to bully them with numbers. Zhou Wudao was still angry. Who are you? Yu Qianyang looked at him. Zhou Wudao faintly emitted a great sense of threat. Yu Qianyang had only experienced this feeling from Shouwuk. Obviously, this might be a tough person as difficult to deal with as Shouwuk. At this moment, Yu Qianyang felt powerless. In the Battle of Wills in Golden Light City, Shouwuk had given him a great psychological trauma. Who I am has nothing to do with you. I just want to ask, are you known as the Killer of the East Continent? Zhou Wudao pointed at Yu Qianyang. East Continent? Yu Qianyang looked confused. Who did he offend? But this confused look, coupled with Yu Qianyang's appearance, gave people a feeling that he was pretending to know. Yu Qianyang's hair was standing upside down. His appearance was extremely flamboyant. Moreover, his eyes were arrogant. Coupled with his tone, it seemed that he was looking down on Zhou Wudao. Ha ha! Zhou Wudao laughed. Yes, this was the look. When he turned around to escape from the imperial martial competition, he saw Qin Hao with this look. It was the look of a king looking down on him. However, not everyone in the world had the same qualifications as Qin Hao and dared to look down on Zhou Wudao. There could only be one Qin Hao. Buzz. His right fist palace opened. A dazzling light suddenly exploded in his fist. Zhou Wudao activated the power of one palace. Without saying much, he attacked. Vitality. The sudden explosion of light startled Yu Qianyang. Now, all the martial artists in fallen Emperor Bay were unable to use vitality. Because of this, the suppression of cultivation level was not obvious. If someone could use vitality to attack, it would undoubtedly be a disaster. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he could kill all the martial artists. The sudden disappearance of the light woke Yu Qianyang up. Obviously, his opponent was still bound by the rules. The fist technique was probably a set of martial arts technique. Since that was the case, why would he be afraid? Yu Qianyang also threw a punch. He was not to be trifled with. Bang! The two fists collided. A terrifying feeling of power shook the air. Zhou Wudao maintained his posture and did not move at all. However, Yu Qianyang was sent flying. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. His back hit the wall in the hall, causing a large spider web to fly out. With just one punch, the blazing sun saint was defeated. Zhou Wudao was also shocked. He looked at his fist in disbelief. When the two collided, he judged that Yu Qianyang's cultivation was at the first level of the Emperor realm. He was not weak. Moreover, he seemed to have soul power in his body. This person was not much weaker than Mo Xian. What surprised Zhou Wudao was that he defeated an opponent who was almost as strong as Mo Xian with one punch. He only used the power of one palace. It was so terrifying. Puff! Yu Qianyang just stood up and vomited another mouthful of blood. He looked at Zhou Wudao in horror. This person was so powerful. He was stronger than Shouwuk. He was a terrifying opponent. I admit defeat. The divine fire is yours. Let's go. Yu Qianyang did not dare to stay for long. They were not as good as the Jing tribe and Knight Luo Palace in terms of numbers. Zhou Wudao defeated him with one punch. How could they compete? Trash like this deserves to be called the assassin of the East Continent? Zhou Wudao looked at the embarrassed Yu Qianyang with disdain. If he had known this would happen, he would have let Tan Geng do it. It was an insult to his status. Yu Qianyang and the others left. Qin Hao did not want to argue with them. However, when he saw that the Sacred Temple team was escorting a black-clothed young man covered in wounds, Qin Hao and Xiaogua's eyes turned red. Did I say you could leave? Using the water wind step, Qin Hao blocked the door with a speed that ordinary people couldn't understand. Qin Hao, I've already given you the ruins. If I made you unhappy because of the troops, I can apologize to you. Could it be that you want to kill them all? Yu Qianyang said with grief. He could not use his Yuan Qi. He had great abilities, but he could not use them. How sad was that? He was not willing to accept this. Does the Blazing Sun Temple have the habit of imprisoning the friends of others? Qin Hao did not speak. Xiaogua stared with red eyes and pointed at the black-clothed young man in the team. The young man seemed to have suffered a serious blow, causing him to be in a trance. At this time, he heard a familiar voice. He looked up subconsciously and said, "Little Gua, boss." This young man was Little Nine, the crazy man who had been called the Death Guard in the Emperor Martial competition. Once, no one in the Western Division could stop him. Now, he was separated from everyone. The Blazing Sun Temple bullied him, forced him to be a slave, and tortured him day and night. If not for the obsession in his heart, Little Nine would have died long ago. However, he had to live no matter what. Even if he had to live an ignoble life, he had to find Yi Shuihan, Qin Yun, and the others. He believed that everyone must be alive and would not die in the mouth of the sea demons. Now, he had met Qin Hao and Xiaogua before he could find any of them. Little Nine burst into tears. "Give me a reason not to kill you." Qin Hao swung his right arm and held the great void sword in his hand. Seeing Little Nine's miserable appearance, Zheng Qingqi's heart trembled violently. Although Yi Yao did not know him, she could see that the black-clothed young man was very important to them from the performance of Qin Hao and Xiaogua. He waved his hand secretly. The female disciples of the Knight Luo Palace, as well as Zheng Qingqi and the others, silently bet on the door. "Eldest senior brother, let's go." Seeing this, the young leader, who had been severely injured by Tsiogwa, guessed that he had caused great trouble without thinking. At this time, he swallowed something and his whole body was emitting flames, as if he had turned into a red-hot iron pillar and was about to explode. The young man opened his arms and rushed to the door as if he had gone crazy. "Molten fire pill, back off!" Qin Hao shouted in shock. Water Wind steps lightly tapped the ground, and like a raging wind, he rushed towards the Yellow disciples. In an instant, the red-hot young man missed his target, and with a thunderous boom, huge boulders tumbled down. The entrance to the hall was blasted into ruins, and dust billowed in the air. Disciple Ru Feng. Yu Qianyang screamed, but did not dare to delay. Taking advantage of the smoke and dust, he pulled the other disciples and rushed out of the palace. "I'll kill you all!" Tsiogwa swung the demon-subduing pestle in his hand. His eyes were bloodshot as he chased after them. "Don't chase!" Qin Hao pulled him back. At this time, Zheng Qingqi and the others retreated a little slower. They were all knocked to the ground by the blast. They were all injured. Jing San even lost an arm. The explosive young man had eaten a molten fire pill, which used a martial artist's body as medicine to explode the dantian. It must have been concocted by the elders of the Fierce Sun Temple and left for them. This was to ensure Yu Qianyang's safety. Other than the dead young man, there were 8 other disciples. Each of them must have had one. Without Yuan Qi, they could not defend against it. It was extremely dangerous. Even if they were unwilling, they could only let Yu Qianyang escape. However, after this debt entered the divine palace, they still could not escape. Little Nine could not bear the torture. He relaxed and fell into a coma. The others were also injured. It was more important to take care of the injured. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1366. Qian Qian Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Chapter 1366. Fire Emperor Bei Master Yue Qianyang escaped with injuries. The remaining rogue cultivators naturally did not dare to fight for the fire seed. There was only one fire seed. Qin Hao would not give it away. But the collapsed stone pillars outside the temple had fire attribute cultivation techniques carved on them, so some of the fire attribute cultivators who rushed over had some gains. The sun set in the west. Yi Yao and her junior sister were in charge of guarding the temple door. Inside, Tan Geng was bandaging Zheng San's wounds and checking on Little Nine's condition. Little Nine was not heavily injured, but perhaps because he had not eaten his fill for a long time and had been tortured by the Fierce Sun Temple disciples, he had fainted. As for the fire seed in the altar, no one fought with Qin Hao. No one was good at fire techniques, only Qin Hao had a fire source spirit, so it was most suitable for him to refine it into his body. As night fell, the purple flames gently swayed, illuminating the ancient ruins. Everyone sat together, but Qin Hao was not in a rush to refine it. How could he have the mood to do so? When the divine palace opened, they thought that Yi Shuihan and the others would not come, but Little Nine's appearance had broken everything. They had still come. Stepping on the path to becoming a god was filled with danger. The sea monsters were very fierce, and entering the inner sea had a 90% chance of dying. Whether Yi Shuihan and the others were alive or dead, they still did not know. How could Qin Hao be calm? Pavilion Master Qin, he's awake. Qin Hao's face was terrifyingly calm. Little Nine moved slightly, opening his tired eyes. Tan Geng helped him sit up, taking out all the food they had stored. There was not much food, it was all dried meat. He also took out a bag of water for Little Nine. Little Nine grabbed the dried meat and wolfed it down, looking very hungry. His throat was dry and hard to swallow, his eyes filled with tears. He coughed and spat out some, but then, he quickly grabbed it and stuffed it back into his mouth. He ate while crying. Eat slowly. Qin Hao's hand rested on Little Nine's shoulder. His palm was warm and strong, giving him a sense of security. He took the bag of water, pulled out the stopper and placed it in front of Little Nine. Little Nine's hands held the bag of water. He raised his head and drank it. Everyone watched in silence, no one made a sound. Now was not the time to ask questions. Syogwa's eyes were red as he clenched his teeth tightly. He clenched his fists so tightly that they made creaking noises. He really couldn't imagine that the beggar in front of him, who looked like a hungry ghost, was actually the vast star from the competition. Just what kind of method did the people of Blazing Sun Temple use to torture Little Nine like this? After a long while, Little Nine finally recovered. He rubbed his eyes that were filled with tiny scars. With a plop, he knelt heavily in front of Qin Hao. He didn't even dare to raise his head. "Boss, I'm sorry." Qin Hao sat there quietly. He didn't say anything, nor did he help him up. He knew that Little Nine would tell him everything. At this moment, words of consolation were too weak. Little Nine needed to vent his anger. Since Qin Hao did not move, no one dared to interfere. They were all waiting. On the day that Little Gua took people away, everyone was actually anxious to follow. "We knew that he wanted to accompany you to participate in the Divine Palace Omen. As people of the Grand Alliance, Brother Han, Brother Qin Yun, Sister Wanqin, everyone was the same." In the beginning, Uncle Long Yuan's face was always tense. He looked like he wouldn't allow us to leave. In fact, he was pretending. A few months ago, he secretly prepared everything and ordered us to cross the sea to meet up with Boss and Little Gua. Little Nine said truthfully. Qin Hao came from Western Liang. It was his appearance that united all the forces. Without Qin Hao, there wouldn't be the Western Liang that was united today. Qin Hao's personal growth carried the hopes of all the elders. It was the blood and sweat of an entire generation. Yilong Yuan, Xian Qiue, Nalan Jinggang, Western Zhao, and even the Qin family would definitely not agree to let him face the unknown danger alone. Therefore, Yi Shuihan, Qin Yun, Qin Wanqin, Little Nine, Aku, and some selected elites formed the second team and crossed the sea to help. Originally, everything went smoothly. The Western Liang battleship safely arrived in the southern region. After everyone disembarked, they immediately inquired about Qin Hao's whereabouts. After all, Qin Hao had stirred up too much trouble and his reputation had spread throughout the southern region. At this time, a long time after the battle in Feng City, the battle platform arrived. Originally, Brother Qin Yun wanted to go to Feng City directly to find you, but Brother Han said that there were too many things for you to do in the past. Now that the opportunity is here, it's time to test us. Relying on one's own strength to survive to the fallen Emperor Bei is called ability. It proves that we didn't neglect martial arts and didn't stop improving. Little Nine said with a warm expression. It was as if Qin Yun and Yi Shuihan were sitting in front of him. However, what happened next was beyond his imagination. It was hard for him to accept. That day was a nightmare for him. We underestimated the dangers of the inner sea. Strange man-eating fish, deformed water demons. Little Nine raised his head. His eyes were bloodshot and his face was green. His expression was ferocious. It was as if he had returned to that moment when he was at the bottom of the cold sea and was abandoned by the world. Everyone had personally experienced how terrifying the sea monsters were. If Qin Hao hadn't defeated Jiuying that day, no one, including Zhou Wudao, would have survived. Perhaps ordinary water monsters were still manageable for the group. However, a demon at the level of an upper-level sea emperor was far beyond their ability to resist. Little Nine's ship naturally didn't encounter Jiuying or the Sea Qilin. However, they encountered a three-headed sea dragon, a rank 8 sea emperor. Their ship was sunk. Cries filled the air as blood soaked the surface of the sea. Dozens of elites from Luo Shui, Western Qin, Nalan family, and Western Zhao were all torn apart by the water demons in an instant. The waves raged and the undercurrents and storms formed at the bottom of the sea. The martial artists fell into the water and their primordial spirits were restrained. Their abilities were far inferior to those on the surface. Facing a rank 8C emperor, everyone felt a heavy sense of helplessness. If we didn't lure it away, we would have all died. At that time, Sister Wanqin was heavily injured, and Brother Han blamed himself. He lured the 3 dragons away by himself. Even so, everyone was scattered by the rampaging sea demons. Why was I the one who stayed behind? Why didn't I die? Little Nine has no face-to-face, boss, no face. Little Nine wailed in grief, his head smashing against the ground. Everyone was scattered. He hugged a wooden plank and floated for an unknown period of time. He was exhausted and muddle-headed. He seemed to have been fished onto a ship. However, what welcomed him wasn't a kind soul. There was no need to talk about what happened next. Qin Hao guessed that Yu Qianyang had probably used Little Nine as a scout along the way, and used him to explore all sorts of dangerous places. Perhaps the heavens took pity on Little Nine and didn't let him meet with any great danger. However, he didn't have food to eat and was beaten to a pulp. No one knew how to comfort him. Being attacked by the sea monsters, that horrifying and bloody scene was probably something that all the martial artists who participated in the expedition would never forget in their lives. It was indeed comparable to a nightmare that was branded into their souls. Qin Hao's team was very lucky. After defeating Jiuying, the team was complete. However, out of the hundreds of thousands of martial artists, many teams had died. Many people had experienced the same fate as Little Nine. Yi Shuihan's team was just one of the hundreds of thousands of unfortunate people. Shuihan won't die so easily. After a long time, Jing Qinqi shouted hoarsely. His tone was extremely firm. His performance was beyond everyone's expectations. Qin Hao understood. As an opponent that he once admired, Jing Qinqi was naturally unwilling to admit that Yi Shuihan would die. This was similar to the subtle relationship between Zhou Wudao and Qin Hao. If someone were to tell Zhou Wudao that Qin Hao was killed, Zhou Wudao would definitely raise his head to the sky and laugh heartily, treating it as the biggest joke in the world. I also believe that Shuihan is fine. Not only him, my cousin, Aku, and Wanqin are all alive. Qin Hao nodded. His gaze was deep. The ship had sunk, but it did not mean that they were dead. Yi Shuihan used to be a coward. Ever since he was kidnapped by the ancestor of the Yuan family, Yuan Tianzai, and brought into the dark poisonous forest where one of his fingers was chopped off, his personality had changed drastically. He was not a fool. Of course, the impact of seeing the ship sunk and his team members being dismembered by the school of fish was definitely not small. Under such circumstances, people would break down and go crazy. However, there had to be someone who stood up and took the risk. Yi Shuihan was not reckless. Since he dared to lure the 3-headed sea dragon away, he definitely had something to rely on. No one understood Yi Shuihan better than Qin Hao. After personally experiencing the terror of the seabed, Qin Hao would not underestimate the inland sea. However, it was precisely because he understood both aspects that he was certain that Yi Shuihan would be fine. There was a high possibility that he was still alive. After all, Yi Shuihan's potential in the water was unimaginable. Brother Han inherited Uncle Long Yuan's bloodline. Wherever there is water, he can unleash 200% of his battle strength. Perhaps he is afraid of accidentally injuring you when he lured the sea dragon away. He definitely has a way to survive. Brother Jiu, don't despair too much. Xiaogua glanced at Qin Hao. He was not certain, but his boss's gaze was clearly hinting that he had to do everything he could to convince little Jiu that the others were still alive. Otherwise, he might commit suicide out of self-blame. Really? Little Jiu raised his head and asked. In fact, he had always harbored a small hope in his heart. However, after being abused by Yu Qianyang, he had sunk into darkness. That hope in his heart had slowly turned into despair. Now that his family was encouraging him, he seemed to have found some support. How can people die so easily? The top 10 of the Emperor Martial competition definitely won't die, Zhou Wudao muttered indifferently. Little Jiu looked in the direction of the voice. He felt that it was somewhat familiar. When his gaze landed on Zhou Wudao, his heart could not help but tremble. He suddenly realized that the former third place of the Emperor Martial competition was also here. Qin Hao glanced at Zhou Wudao. This guy clearly wanted to be a good person, but he still pretended to be cold. Trust me, they are definitely alive. Within 7 days, I will let you see everyone here safe and sound. Qin Hao stood up and gazed at the night sky. He felt that it was time to do something big in Emperor Bay. What do you want to do? Qin Hao stood up. Zhou Wudao immediately stood up. He was very vigilant and faintly felt that something big was about to happen. Perhaps I have been too low-key recently, to the point that people have forgotten who I am. Qin Hao's gaze landed on the divine flame in the altar. In order to take care of Xiao Han and consider everyone's safety, he had been holding back since he arrived at Emperor Bay. He did not want to have any conflicts with others and did not want anyone to get hurt. He avoided other signs. Even if he was searching for ruins, he was extremely cautious. Once there were too many people, he would immediately retreat. However, if he wanted to find the whereabouts of Yi Xuehan and the others, hiding was not the way. Only by dominating Emperor Bei, making everyone respect and fear him, and letting all the geniuses in the world know of Qin Hao's existence. Let Emperor Bei spread the name of Dendi. As long as Yi Xuehan was alive, even if he had 1 breath left, he would crawl to meet Qin Hao, including everyone else. Brother Qing Qi, tomorrow, I will have to trouble you to go to the Sea Sand Gang. Tell the gang leader, Sea Sand, to spread news about me. Say that Qin Hao has obtained the inheritance of the Divine Palace Great Emperor and an Emperor weapon in some ruins. He is also heavily injured and is hiding in Cloud Mist Mountain. Anyone who wants to take the inheritance and kill me can surround this mountain. Qin Hao grinned and looked at Zhou Wudao with an understanding gaze. It was as if he was saying that the person by his side was Zhou Wudao. Chapter 1367. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. It was too difficult to find the whereabouts of everyone in the vast sea of people. Only by becoming famous and shaking Emperor Luo Bei would Yi Xuehan and the others be able to find them. Qin Hao thought of a few methods. The most effective method was to sweep through the various ruins and kill all the signs. But in this way, it would inevitably draw the ire of the masses and arouse public indignation, pushing the entire group into a state of eternal damnation, and everyone had the right to punish them. No matter how strong Qin Hao was, he wasn't arrogant enough to fight against 10,000 people. That would be suicide. Besides, Xiao Han's spiritual consciousness had just awakened. No matter what, she couldn't be involved in the vortex. Qin Hao gave up on the first option without hesitation. Then, he could only use himself as bait and release the news that he had a supreme treasure to lure Yi Xuehan and the others over. If he became the target alone, he could avoid the risk of the team. The risk Qin Hao took was huge, and was no different from a lunatic. Zhou Wudao couldn't help but be shocked. When the news was released, it would spread like wildfire and cover Emperor Luo Bei. It was conceivable that if Yi Xuehan wasn't dead, he would definitely come. However, Yi Xuehan wouldn't be the only one who would come by then. How tempting was the inheritance of a 9-star great emperor and the Dharch weapon! Why did the countless geniuses of the continent step onto the god's path and enter the sacred palace to compete for a disciple slot? Wasn't it to become a Dharch? Now, the opportunity to become a martial emperor was right in front of him. He even had to give away an emperor weapon. He didn't need to enter the divine palace to become a martial emperor. Qin Hao was basically turning himself into food on a plate for others to eat. How many people would he attract? At first, everyone objected, but their objections were invalid. Qin Hao had the final say. The reason he chose to bring Zhou Wudao along wasn't because Zhou Wudao was strong. It was because this person could easily become a hidden danger. Without Qin Hao around, no one could suppress him. Then, let's go together. Take Zhou Wudao and leave Xiaogua behind. He was now a level 9 Yuan Venerate and had the power of 2 palaces, so he could hold his own. If a conflict really broke out, cultivators of the physical body had the advantage in Emperor Luo Bei, and Jing Qingqi and the others were also quite strong. Qin Hao wasn't worried. On the other hand, Jing Qingqi was unsure about the Si Sand gang. It was rumored that Si Sand himself was extremely powerful. The two sides had no relationship, so why would he help and spread false information? On this point, Qin Hao did not give an explanation. In fact, Jing Qingqi was overthinking it. Qin Hao and Si Sand really did have a little friendship. This kind of friendship was, of course, built on the basis of strength. Qin Hao had taken a lot of food from Si Sand in private. After a while, the two of them were very familiar with each other. Si Sand would definitely give him face, unless he didn't want to live anymore. Of course, every time they asked for food, Qin Hao would leave behind an equal amount of clean water. In exchange, Hai Sha did not lose out. Otherwise, Qin Hao would not have just broken one of Ma Main's hands. He would have given Si Sand face. Yunmeng Mountain. Located in the northwest of Diluo Bay, the mountain range covered an area of several hundred miles. Half of it was shrouded in clouds and mist. Therefore, it was named Yunmeng Mountain by the conquerors. The terrain of this mountain was complicated, with crisscrossing ravines and clouds obscuring one's vision. It was easy to get lost after entering the mountain. Half a month later, a piece of news spread, causing a stir in the entire Emperor Luo Bei. It was rumored that a white-haired martial artist had obtained the inheritance of a 9-star great emperor. He entered the mountain with an emperor's weapon and disappeared. The first person to fight with the white-haired martial artist was the leader of the Si Sand gang. Because he failed to obtain the inheritance, he was severely injured by the white-haired martial artist. However, the white-haired martial artist had already been hit by Si Sand's killer move. At present, Si Sand led the gang to seal off Yunmeng Mountain. They vowed not to give up until the inheritance was obtained. When the news spread, all the people around Crescent Bay came like wasps. The inheritance of a great emperor and an emperor's weapon. Who didn't want it? Who didn't want it? However, the Si Sand gang was extremely barbaric. They sealed off the mountain and didn't allow anyone to approach. Those who violated the seal were killed on the spot. The martial artists who didn't believe the rumor now believed that the great emperor's inheritance had fallen. This chapter is not finished, please turn the page. The news of Yunmeng Mountain instantly turned from a rumor to a real fact. Under the mountain, inside a magnificent green felt tent, Jing Qingqi and the others were sitting in the middle. At this moment, the boss of the Si Sand gang, a big man with thick and long arms, exuberant body hair, and an ape-like face, had a silly smile on his face. He ordered people to place plates of rough mountain fruits in front of everyone. I don't have anything good here. Everything edible around Emperor Luo Bei has been stripped of its bark. Qin Hao also took a lot. I hope you don't mind. Si Sand's voice was calm. It could be seen that he was speaking in a very low voice. However, his voice was abnormally deep, like a muffled thunder. Leader Si Sand is too polite. Jing Qingqi cupped his hands and looked down at the mountain fruits on the plates. Many of them were rotten and emitted a strange smell. They must have been stored for a long time. Perhaps Si Sand was reluctant to eat them. Today, everyone from the Haoqi Alliance was here, so he took them out. Under the current situation, these were already very precious. However, Jing Qingqi really didn't have any appetite. Brother Hai, you have so many subordinates. Take them with you into the mountain. At this moment, Xiaogua said worriedly. He had a sweet mouth since he was little and liked to make friends. Sea Sand was the incarnation of a mountain ape. He was simple and honest, which was very compatible with Xiaogua's temperament. They had just known each other for a short time, but they were as close as old friends. Brother Gua, it's not that I don't want to let you in. Qin Hao's message is very clear. He doesn't allow you to enter the mountain. This is for your own good. Sea Sand shook his head. It was impossible for him to let them pass. Although he was the incarnation of a mountain ape and was originally a demon beast, he was not stupid. If Xiaogua had an accident in the mountain, Qin Hao would not let him go. He couldn't beat Qin Hao, so Sea Sand didn't want to be beaten. Don't worry too much. There are very few people in the world who can beat me. Qin Hao travels alone and comes and goes without a trace. Yunmeng Mountain is huge and the terrain is complicated. To be honest, it's not easy to kill him. Moreover, didn't you say that he has an extremely powerful partner who is going into the mountain with him? Sea Sand said. It would have been better if he didn't say anything. Now that he did, it made them even more worried. That Zhou Wudao, I always feel that he is very strange. He can't be of the same mind as my brother-in-law. K.Er was very afraid that Qin Hao would be stabbed in the back at a critical moment. Miss K.Er, I admit that Zhou Wudao is not a good person. However, there is one thing that you might not understand. He has always been principled. Tan Geng was a little dissatisfied. Can you guarantee that? K.Er looked at Tan Geng and sneered. Zhou Wudao will not play any tricks, and will only kill openly. Bai Xiaotong spoke in a stuttering voice. He was thin and weak, and his face was pale. He gave off a sickly feeling. Go away and vomit. Kaya rolled her eyes. Along the way, everyone in the group had help. In fact, she was very grateful to Tan Geng. Tan Geng had helped everyone a lot. On the other hand, Bai Xiaotong had been useless. Miss Kaya, I realize that you have a lot of opinions about us. Can you not target us? Tan Geng said. Brother. Tan. Don't say any more. Bai Xiaotong pushed Tan Geng and lowered his head in shame. Indeed, he had been a burden to everyone all along. However, he was not useless. It was just that he could not do anything unless it was a critical moment. Everyone was saying something, and the tent was in chaos. Sea Sand could not do anything. He could not touch Qin Hao's people. He rubbed his head with his thick thumb. Don't be noisy. Listen to Hao. At this moment, Xiao Han's clear voice flowed like a stream. Immediately, everyone shut up. Boss Sea Sand, someone is trespassing on the mountain. A voice sounded outside the tent. Sea Sand was stunned for a moment. Then, his ape face smiled slightly. What was supposed to come had finally come. He did not know if it was an enemy or a friend. To be more precise, he did not know if it was Qin Hao's enemy or his friend. However, Qin Hao had instructed that if anyone tried to force their way in, they could let them pass to avoid harming the Sea Sand gang members. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Although Sea Sand's strength was extraordinary and he had many gang members, sealing the mountain was only to create an illusion. It did not really block all the visitors. Even if the Sea Sand gang really blocked it, they would not be able to stop thousands of warriors. Let's go and have a look. Sea Sand got up first. Qin Hao had obtained the great emperor's inheritance, so it would naturally attract Yi Xuehan. But it might also attract enemies who wanted to kill him, such as the southern territories' Xianyuan clan. All of this was within Qin Hao's expectations. Luring people into the mountain and killing Chang Hello was also part of the plan. It depended on who would take the bait first. Jing Qingqi and the others put on the face masks they had prepared in advance and drew a large sand character on their lapels. They pretended to be members of the Sea Sand gang and followed. At the foot of Yunmeng Mountain. Now, thousands of warriors had set up camp, and the number was still increasing. The fallen Emperor Bei was very large. It would take time for those who received the news of the great emperor's inheritance to arrive. Although there were many warriors, No one had broken Si San's rule and trespassed on the mountain. After all, Si San had killed 5 gang leaders in one fell swoop. His strength was obvious to all. But if there were other forces that were not inferior to the Si San gang, the rule would be broken. Coincidentally, there were quite a number of experts who had arrived today. What's going on? Si San wore a cloth jacket that was stained with blood. Since there was a rumor that he had fought a fierce battle with the white-haired warrior, of course, he had to put on a perfect show to avoid exposing any flaws. Gang leader, these people despised your reputation and wanted to enter the mountain to seize the inheritance. They even slapped me. At a rugged road leading to Cloud Mist Mountain, more than 10 Si San gang members held weapons and blocked the road with wooden beams. They had set up a checkpoint. At this moment, a one-armed man with a horse's mane covered his face with one hand and complained tearfully to Si San when he saw him come in person. He pointed at the troublemakers. Si San looked in the direction he was pointing at and saw a group of young men with impressive appearances standing side by side. There were 4 of them in the lead. The 4 outstanding young men gave people different temperaments, but their arrogance was the same as if they were all princes. You are Hai Sha? An individual dressed in white, snow-white hair fluttering about. He was like an immortal saint as he took a step forward in an overbearing manner. His voice was very beautiful and melodious like a zither. He stared at Si San's face. Chang Hello laughed in his heart. It turned out that the gang leader of Si San gang was actually a mountain ape. Who are you? Si San's face was filled with anger. At this moment it was not an act. The smile of the white-haired young man made him feel extremely uncomfortable, as if he was mocking him. Chang Hello of Southern Proud Empire in the southern region. Chang Hello's calm voice was filled with arrogance. Why did you hit my men? Si San's eyes narrowed and asked. Let me ask you. Half a month ago, a white-haired warrior entered the mountain with the great emperor's inheritance. Did you see it with your own eyes? Chang Hello did not answer but asked Si San instead. What does it have to do with you? Si San shouted. Ape man, let me give you a piece of advice. Don't be so loud when you speak. If you scare my subordinates, something very unfriendly might happen. Xianyuan Jie said lazily, his eyes sweeping behind him. Si San looked behind Xianyuan Jie and his heart sank. The warriors in front of him were all dressed in the same uniform and holding the Xianyuan flag high. There were no less than 600 people under the flag, which was 3 times the number of Si San gang members. In addition, there were more than 50 people standing behind Murong Zijuan and Qiyuan. Obviously, this huge team was formed by 3 parties with the Xianyuan clan as the leader. This was not what Si San should consider. He only knew that this force was seriously out of his control. Perhaps he should take back what he had said to Jing Qinqi before. Taking Qin Hao's life was not an easy task, but rather it was something that was set in stone. End of chapter. Chapter 1368. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation rushing to the rescue. If these 700 martial artists entered the mountain, how would Qin Hao deal with them? Moreover, the person accompanying him was extremely unreliable. There were many martial artists gathered at the foot of Yunmeng Mountain, and all of them had ulterior motives and wanted to take advantage of the situation. Si San really couldn't imagine it. Cold sweat slid down his cheeks. He could tell that Chang Hello and the others were full of hostility and even resentment towards Qin Hao. I'm asking you a question. Are you mute? Murong Zijuan was rather impatient. No comment. Si San said in a low voice. Chang Hello smiled and exchanged glances with Xianyuan Jie. Judging from Si San's reaction, the white-haired martial artist who entered the mountain with injuries was undoubtedly Qin Hao. This was very likely to be true. Search the mountain. Xianyuan Jie was very happy. He kicked away the checkpoint and ignored the Si San gang. The mighty team was about to enter the mountain path. Sea Sand naturally wouldn't stop them. Not to mention that Qin Hao had told him to do so. Even if he did, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to stop them. Wait. Chang Helo hesitated for a moment, his brows slightly furrowed as if he was worried. Brother has been looking forward to killing Qin Hao day and night. Now, he's trapped in this mountain. What is he waiting for? Xianyuan Jie turned around with a sullen face. His hatred for Qin Hao was even stronger than Chang Helo's. Xianyuan Feng was his brother. If he hadn't been killed by Qin Hao, Chang Helo wouldn't have the wealth he had today, and wouldn't have the right to stand in front of him and speak. Chang Helo was an outsider after all. His Xianyuan family, the teacher of the emperor, had always been arrogant and feared wherever he pointed his sword at. However, in the Battle of Feng City, his halberd sank into the sand and he suffered heavy losses. Taifeng Mountain, the southern border, the 7 provinces and 14 counties all fell into the hands of Ningwu Kingdom. These were all related to Qin Hao. How could Xianyuan Jie not hate him? Brother, don't misunderstand. You haven't seen Qin Hao in person, but you must have heard of his abilities. This person arrogantly said that he would suppress the entire southern region and treat geniuses as dirt. How could he be injured so easily? The Sea Sand Gang leader was able to injure him. This ability, presumably is not much worse than Qin Hao, right? Chang Helo's eyes. He wasn't stupid. He was not at all, and he was careful in everything he did when it came to Qin Hao. Sea Sand Xianyuan Jie. Xianyuan Jie's heart trembled, and only then did he react. His gaze was dark as he looked at Haisha. My Xianyuan family's genius would like to exchange a few moves with gang leader Hai. Translation CC translation gang translation with the translation with translation Xianyuan Gu, Xianyuan Liang, Xianyuan Di. Xianyuan Jie wave. Translation is yi translation, is si yi mu translation in the translation in, the yi si san the yi si with that was in the family. If su. Translation. Yi is that, translations? S to Yishuan Yuan Jie had heard of Qin Hao defeating Chang Helo, Tang Xingchen, and Xianyuan Feng in the Golden Light City debate. If Sea Sand could injure Qin Hao, then he should be able to defeat Xianyuan Gu and the other 2. Otherwise, it would be a lie. The 3 figures were extremely fast. Their inner strength gathered on their fists, emitting a faint halo. They were powerful enough to collapse a mountain as they attacked Sea Sand's back. Even if they didn't want to fight, they had to. You've gone too far. Sea Sand roared as he turned around. His roar was like a gust of wind. It was true that Qin Hao brought the great emperor's inheritance into the mountain. However, Sea Sand had never seen anyone as rude as the Xianyuan family. His anger came from the bottom of his heart. He punched out with both fists. His ape body was extremely tall, and his aura was wild. As he turned around and roared, it was a terrifying visual impact. His arms swelled and his muscles were as hard as mountains. He killed 2 people with his fist. Before the 3rd person's fist landed, he raised his leg and kicked him in the chest. Bam! This kick was earth-shattering. The martial artist named Xianyuan Di spat out blood from his mouth. He was like a kite with a broken string as he fell heavily under Xianyuan Jie's feet. One hit had made him lose his ability to fight. Then, Sea Sand's fist turned into a palm. After blocking the attacks of the remaining 2, the giant ape's palm gripped the opponent's fist tightly. His body spun quickly like a whirlwind. In the process, Xianyuan Gu and Xianyuan Liang, who were under his palm, felt the world spinning and their organs churning. They couldn't resist the powerful force. Die! Sea Sand shouted in a domineering manner. He stopped abruptly and pressed the 2 people who were seeing stars under his palm to the ground. Crack! Amidst the sound of bones breaking, Sea Sand's giant palm had moved to the opponent's head. With a heavy slap, Xianyuan Gu and Xianyuan Liang's skulls ruptured. In just a few breaths, 2 were dead and 1 was injured. This scene shocked everyone. It was rumored that Si Sand had once killed 5 sect masters by himself. He was indeed powerful. Jing Qingqi and the others were also shocked. Under the veil covering his face, Jing Qingqi swallowed a mouthful of saliva with difficulty. Did Qin Hao forcefully snatch food from this person before? He is indeed powerful. Xianyuan Jie was stunned. He didn't really care about the death of the 2 humans. Then, he looked at Chang Hello. Enter the mountain. Chang Hello didn't hesitate any longer. He turned and walked along the path. The 3 people fighting Si Sand were peak Yuan venerates with extremely strong physique. Under the circumstances where they couldn't use their Yuan Qi, they were like ants being trampled to death by Si Sand. Physical martial cultivators were indeed the favorites of Diluo Bei. They were the most suitable for survival. Based on this inference, Qin Hao might have been injured by Si Sand. Although Qin Hao's physical body was also very strong, Si Sand's body was in the form of a mountain ape, so he had the advantage. Sect Master! Sect Master! Sect Master! Chang Hello stopped in his tracks when he heard the call. He instinctively turned around and saw Si Sand kneeling on one knee with his hand on his chest. The blood stain on his chest seemed to have thickened. He was already injured. Had his old injury ruptured? Chang Hello snickered. His previous apprehension lessened a little as he walked away quickly. He was a little anxious. Si Sand was injured, and so was Qin Hao. He had to get rid of this scourge before his injuries recovered. However, only Xiaogua, Jing Qingqi, and a few others saw clearly that Si Sand had stabbed a dagger into his body. Because his palm was wide and well covered, it was very difficult to discover. At the moment, the Zheng tribe members who were pretending to be members of Si Sand's gang, as well as the female disciples of Knight Luo Palace, surrounded Si Sand. The others naturally wouldn't come forward to examine his injuries. They didn't have the guts to do so. Why bother? Jing Qingqi sighed. Si Sand was really loyal. I hope I can numb them and help Qin Hao a little. However, you guys shouldn't enter the mountain anymore. Si Sand pulled out the dagger and hid it in his sleeve. The situation was grim now. Qin Hao had too many enemies, so he couldn't help. However, he couldn't let Xiaogua and the others go to their death. Si Sand pretended to be injured, but it turned out to be a real injury. Zheng Qingqi and the others felt guilty and dismissed the idea of entering the mountain. They left little Jiu and Xiaogua and helped Si Sand back to rest. At the moment, the Xianyuan army entered the mountain and dug 3 feet into the ground. They were determined to find Qin Hao and take his life while he was weak. Some of the other warriors who came to Yunmeng Mountain also entered the mountain. They wanted to take advantage of the situation. What if they really met Qin Hao? However, most of the warriors chose to leave and continue to search for relics to cultivate. The Xianyuan family's team was extremely large. The chances of snatching the inheritance from them were slim. It was better to spend their time in more practical places. The crowd gradually retreated, but there were still some who were hesitating at the mountain pass. Your Highness, let's enter the mountain quickly. Master is seriously injured. You saw how terrifying Si Sand is just now. If we don't save him, he will die. In one of the teams, Ning Chaofan begged anxiously. Ning Tianxing looked at Yunmeng Mountain calmly. He hadn't made up his mind yet. If he hadn't met Qing Jihan, he wouldn't have given up on Qin Hao. However, now that he had made friends with the East Continent, Mo Xian had a conflict with Qin Hao. This wrong step would affect his fate. Third Prince, let's enter the mountain too, Gu Qiu said with a ferocious look. Their purpose of entering the mountain was different from Ning Tianxing's. They didn't want to save people, but to kill people. In Feng City, Qin Hao humiliated Mo Xian incoherently. This hatred was unbearable. Mo Xian and Ning Tianxing didn't move. They looked at Yunmeng Mountain calmly, as if they were waiting for the other party to speak. They wanted to see what the other party's attitude was first. There was a water monster in the inland sea, and Qingji Han was missing. If the princess was still alive, the team would listen to her and respect her. Now that there was no news of the princess, Mo Xian naturally wouldn't submit to Ning Tianxing. On the other hand, Ning Tianxing had never taken Mo Xian seriously and listened to Mo Xian's orders. What a joke! What Ning Tianxing wanted was the first princess of the East Continent. The two of them were calm and silent. Time passed little by little. Almost all the martial artists under Yunmeng Mountain had left, which made Ning Chaofan, Gu Kuei, and the others anxious. Ning Chaofan was determined to go into the mountain to save people. Gu Kuei, Zhongyun, and Lu Bingyan wanted to kill people. On the other hand, the leaders of the two sects looked calm, but in fact they were fighting each other. After a long time, Mo Xian looked at Ning Tianxing and said, "If I kill Qin Hao, will you help me? If I save him, will you stop?" Ning Tianxing smiled calmly. No one is allowed to move. Suddenly, a figure walked in front of the two of them. Her back was thin, but she gave people a sense of nobility. She walked forward like a breeze, leaving behind a lingering fragrance. Looking at the figure, Mo Xian's heart skipped a beat. He instinctively took a step forward. Princess. Alive. She was still alive. Ning Tianxing also couldn't help but take a step forward. He raised his hand slightly, but he couldn't put it down halfway. He shook his head and smiled. He could survive the fierce battle in the internal sea, so how could Qingji Han die so easily? But what did she mean? Why couldn't they enter the mountain? Ning Tianxing and Mo Xian looked at each other, confused. Chang Helou and the other three broke the rules of the Sea Sand Gang and led the team into the mountain. Among them, many martial artists followed in. But some people who were farther away didn't catch up and were still on the way. Looking down from the sky, with Cloud Mist Mountain as the center, a large number of martial artists were still rushing over from several roads. Faster, faster. We must reach Cloud Mist Mountain before dark. A team of about 8 or 9 people was running. They were all strong and most of them had shiny heads. But the leader had waist-length black hair. He was the young master of the southern region Arhat Palace, Luo Yuliang. Thank you. My cousin is lucky to know young Master Luo. It's his good fortune. Qin Yun carried a heavy halberd on his back and held Aku's hand. The team ran until they were out of breath and didn't stop to rest. Don't be so courteous with me. We made an agreement. Now that he's in trouble, the Arhat Palace can't go back on our word. Sigh, I wonder where Showuk is. It would be better if the sword sect is here. Luo Yuliang clenched his fists and ran forward. He had met the team of the Xianyuan family once before. The number was amazing. He hoped that Qin Hao wouldn't fall into their hands. Everyone quickened their pace. A similar scene happened on another road. On this road, there was a group of very outstanding people. They were all tall and carried long swords on their backs. They were a group of sword cultivators. Breathe in and breathe out. Use your breath to stabilize your physical strength. Don't fall behind. We must reach Cloud Mist Mountain before dark. Showuk walked briskly. He didn't use any strength, but his body was like a sword. Yes, eldest senior brother. The disciples of the sword sect shouted together. Although their physique was not as strong as that of the Arhat Palace, the sect had a set of excellent breathing and expiration methods. They could maintain their physical strength to a certain extent. The disciples of the sword sect were all agile. In terms of speed, they were even faster than Luo Yuliang's team. Thank you, a woman in the team said. She couldn't hide the eagerness in her eyes. She wished she could grow wings and fly to Cloud Mist Mountain. Don't worry, Miss Wanqin. Qin Hao's skills are extraordinary and his brute force is very strong. But I don't know anyone who can defeat him. Hurry up, go faster. Showuk ordered and looked at the woman beside him. Since the moment he saved her, he had never seen her smile. She always gave people a cold feeling that she couldn't be approached. It was only when she mentioned Qin Hao that she would unconsciously reveal a smile. But at this moment, her eyes were filled with endless worry. 50 miles north of Cloud Mist Mountain, a group of sabersmen with cold faces was running. This group of sabersmen gave people a sense of endless sharpness. It was as if the sabers on their backs could cut the sky and the earth. However, there was a young man in blue among this group of sabersmen. He seemed out of place. "Sister Chang, I'm very worried about boss." Yi Shuihan looked at Yuning Chang. He was very curious. Why did the beautiful outer elder, who had disappeared from Qiyang University for almost 4 years, suddenly appear in the inland sea and lead a group of terrifying sabersmen to participate in the divine palace omen? At that time, the ship was sunk by 3 sea dragons. He led the sea dragons away and finally used all his trump card. Although he didn't win, he also severely injured the opponent. He was lucky that he was saved by Yuning Chang. As for the rest of the team, he didn't know what happened. The only thing he could do now was to rush to Cloud Mist Mountain and join Qin Hao, although he didn't know whether the rumored white-haired warrior was Qin Hao or not. It's useless to worry. That guy never lets people worry. But this time, he really got into big trouble. Yuning Chang said anxiously. She was the outer elder of Qiyang University who brought Qin Hao from the Four Nations Martial Arts Tournament to the Luoshui Empire. At Qiyang University, she and Qin Hao had called each other sister and brother, and she always protected him. However, a long time ago, she mysteriously disappeared from Qiyang University. Qin Hao asked Xin many times about this, but she never gave him an explanation. In fact, after she disappeared, she went to the southern territory to slay sections. Now the sabersmen behind her were all masters of the younger generation. "Zhan Yi, are you sure you can save him?" Yuning Chang asked the tall young man next to her. "I'm willing to do anything." Zhan Ye's face was old-fashioned. He carried a giant sword on his back. When he ran, his steps were very fast. Not only him, but more than a dozen junior brothers and sisters behind him also moved like this. If one looked carefully, they would find that this group of people had the foundation of the water wind step. Jiutian Divine Emperor. Chapter 1369. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Both must be killed in the Cloud Mist Mountain. The inheritance of the great emperor had appeared. Experts from all directions had gathered here to seize it and become the great emperor. Things were developing in the direction Qin Hao had predicted. After the news spread, Yi Shuihan, Qin Yun, Chen Wanqin, and the others who had been rescued immediately rushed over with a group of powerful reinforcements behind them. No one knew whether the Sword Sect, Beheading Sect, and Arhat Palace could reach the Cloud Mist Mountain tonight and rescue Qin Hao before they besieged him. The situation in the Dilua Bay was boiling and out of control. The outcome was unpredictable. At this moment, 2 figures stood in the West Mountain. These 2 figures were extremely arrogant. They had the same appearance, the same white hair, and the same clothes. Just from their appearance, they looked like twins. It was impossible to distinguish their identities. But if one looked carefully, one would find that between the 2 figures, the one standing on the right only had a single arrogance and a trace of loneliness hidden in the depths of his eyes. The one on the left was more profound and reserved. His calm face carried a trace of majesty. His dark and deep eyes overlooked the world, as if he was the reincarnation of the emperor, giving off a majestic aura. Obviously, this was Qin Hao's real body. And the one on the right was Zhou Wudao in disguise. The person they are targeting is me. After you are exposed, the people surrounding the mountain will abandon you immediately. At that time, we will meet on the peak. Qin Hao looked at Zhou Wudao one last time. Even he couldn't see any flaws in the disguise. Zhou Wudao didn't speak. He looked down the mountain with a trace of loneliness. He wasn't afraid of this trip. Although Qin Hao's behavior was crazy, no different from a lunatic, but Zhou Wudao really didn't care. He couldn't deal with the pursuit of the martial artists from all directions by himself. Even if Zhou Wudao helped him with all his strength, he still couldn't change the situation. So, he needed to use the cicada's shell shedding tactic to attract the attention of the martial artists surrounding the mountain. He needed to disperse them and defeat them one by one. This way, he could relieve Qin Hao's great pressure. Zhou Wudao himself wouldn't face any danger. Once he tore off his disguise, the martial artists surrounding the mountain would lose interest. Qin Hao would be the target. Qin Hao was the one who had the inheritance and emperor weapon. And Zhou Wudao? What could he get by killing him? Are you not afraid that I will betray you? After a long time, Zhou Wudao sneered. Tonight, martial artists were nearly 1,000 martial artists from the mountain. Even if it was a lie, it was still the best opportunity to eliminate Qin Hao. Translation. And this opportunity translation war being this chance, this chance, this chance. Is translation? Is translation translation. Translation Lin Yu translation 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 underscore translation BB translation translation B translation translation translation. The air was still, the two of them did not say anything more, but the sound of footsteps was getting closer and closer. Translation as mountain as translation as mountains translation mountain cloud mountains there were stones there were. Yunmeng Mountain had stood in Di Luo Bay for countless years. Who knew how many geniuses had been buried in this mountain? The Xianyuan family army cleared the way. After entering the mountain, they spread out in a circle at the foot of the mountain. Then, from the foot of the mountain, they slowly ascended and filtered through the mountain. Yunmeng Mountain was huge, with a radius of nearly 100 miles. Unable to use telekinesis to search, it was indeed not easy to find someone. But tonight, it was a heaven-sent opportunity to kill Qin Hao. No matter how difficult it was, no matter what price they had to pay, Xianyuan Jie and Changhe Lo would not waver. The Xianyuan family army was divided into dozens of teams. Each team was in charge of an area. Their search speed was extremely fast. Most of them were selected from the army. They were disciplined and all of them had extraordinary cultivation. Even the slightest movement could attract attention. In addition, among the martial cultivators who entered the mountain, many of them were from the various holy lands of the continent. Their strength was outstanding and they were outstanding. These powerful martial cultivators disregarded the rugged terrain and the large trees between the mountains. With their hands behind their backs, their bodies shot and leapt. Every time they leapt high into the air, their eagle-like sharp gazes could survey the entire terrain beneath their feet. One after another, their gazes invisibly seemed to form a dense large net. It was frightening and meticulous. No one could hide from the discerning eyes of several thousand experts. As time passed, the search team gradually reached the mountainside. Further up, the mountain was shrouded in clouds and mist. It was easy to get lost in the mountains. The difficulty of the search would be greatly increased. The Xianyuan family army obviously slowed down. Every team became extra careful and cautious. Qin Hao was invincible in the same realm. He could even kill emperors. Everyone in the southern region knew this. Even if he was injured, no martial cultivator dared to be arrogant in front of him. At this time, somewhere in the West Mountain, a team from the Xianyuan family found something suspicious. On a huge mountain rock, they saw dried blood stains. This team immediately became extremely cautious. They unsheathed their weapons. More than 10 people huddled closely together. It was as if they were not here to kill, but to be on guard against being killed. Everyone, be careful. Qin Hao is very likely to be hiding nearby. Once you find any trace of him, immediately report to Prince Jie, the team leader said. the leader of the group said. His footsteps were slow, and the hand that held the sword trembled slightly. Wisps of clouds floated in front of his eyes. Every time his vision was blocked, sweat would roll down his cheek. He was afraid that a white-haired face would suddenly appear behind the clouds. The situation of the other members of the team was not much better than his. Whoosh! Suddenly, the sound of something breaking through the air could be heard. It was like a hidden weapon piercing through the air. With a puff, it pierced through the leg of a member of the team. The person fell to the ground and let out a shrill scream. In the silent mountain, his scream was extremely sharp and could be heard far away. It's Qin Hao. I see him. The white-haired one. The injured person pointed in a direction. There was a big tree over there. At this moment, a white figure suddenly appeared from behind the big tree. In the night, the white figure was particularly eye-catching. The figure seemed to be frightened. With a shrill scream, he turned around and fled. However, his speed was not fast. He staggered as if he was on the verge of collapsing, as if he was heavily injured. The team was extremely flustered. The dozen people were also frightened. However, they were from the military and quickly calmed down. They could clearly see that the white figure had escaped. It seemed that the sneak attack just now had consumed a lot of energy. Even the way he escaped was extremely strenuous. It seemed that Qin Hao was indeed severely injured and could no longer kill them. Quickly report to Prince Jie that we have found Qin Hao. The team leader was very excited. He hurriedly pushed aside a soldier and let him pass the message. Then, he waved his hand and pointed in the direction where Qin Hao had escaped. The rest of you chase after him. Da-da-da-da, hurried footsteps could be heard. The group of people chased after the white figure. Qin Hao was not injured, so they would definitely be wary. However, the injured Qin Hao should be much weaker. Even if they fought together, they might not lose. The team leader even fantasized that they might be able to capture Qin Hao alive. They chased after the white figure. The distance between the two parties was constantly shortening. However, for some reason, they could not catch up. Even if they reached out to touch him, they were always just a little bit away. The situation was very strange. Normally, the soldiers of the Xianyuan family would definitely be suspicious. However, even the team leader was muddle-headed at this moment. He only wanted to capture Qin Hao alive and enjoy the glory and wealth. Perhaps if he captured Qin Hao, he would be able to follow Xianyuan Jie. That would be equivalent to entering the corps of the army and having a chance to become an emperor in the future. How could he give up? Becoming an emperor was right in front of him. He had to give it his all. However, after a few turns and twists, the people who were chasing the white shadow suddenly saw a blur in front of them. The shadow in front of them turned from one to the left and the other to the right. The two white shadows separated and fled in two different directions. What's going on? The team leader stopped and shook his head hard. He rubbed his eyes and looked to the left and right. He realized that there were really two figures. Qin Hao had turned into two people. However, this Qin Hao seemed to be exhausted. When the team stopped to observe, the two Qin Hao on the left and right also stopped, bending over and panting heavily. Team leader, what should we do? I'm a little panicked. One of them said. He felt that it was absurd. They might have been deceived. Perhaps all the omens who entered the mountain would die. Although it was a ridiculous idea, what are you panicking for? Can't you see that he's seriously injured? One of the two must be the real one. Split into two teams and take them both down, the team leader roared with a red face. Even he did not expect that Qin Hao had an accomplice in the mountain. However, this showed that Qin Hao's situation might be very bad. Yes. Immediately, the team split into two. 7 people went to the left and 7 people went to the right. As soon as they moved, the two Qin Hao also moved. After panting for a while, they seemed to have recovered a lot of strength. The two of them kept running and ran faster and faster. They were so fast that the people behind them could not catch up. The news from the Xianyuan family spread quickly. After all, the mountain was full of their people. Now that Qin Hao had been discovered, Chang Helou, Xianyuan Jie, Murong Zijuan, and Qi Yuan rushed to the location and met with the team leader. "Where is he?" Xianyuan Jie roared. "We lost him." The team leader shivered and lowered his head. Then, he described everything that had happened without missing a single detail. They were chasing after him when suddenly, Qin Hao turned into two people. One ran into the East Mountain and the other was still in the West Mountain. Moreover, they were both very fast. It did not take long for them to shake them off. "Elder brother, one of them must be Qin Hao's true body. I'm afraid the other one is Zheng Qinqi in disguise." Chang Helou saw through it at a glance. Qin Hao and the Zheng clan's team had joined the expedition together. In addition, there were female disciples of the Night Luo Palace. However, the battle in the internal sea was extremely dangerous. Perhaps all of them would die, or perhaps they would be separated. As the soul of the team, Qin Hao and Zheng Qinqi would naturally be protected. Therefore, they stayed behind to support each other. However, their journey had come to an end today. Ha ha ha, very good. No one can escape. Xianyuan Jie suddenly punched to the side. His fist penetrated the stone beside him. He took out a piece and crushed the stone in his fist. Qin Hao thought that he was very smart? It was ridiculous. Not only would he die today, but Zheng Qinqi would also die. If it were not for the Zheng clan, the battle in Feng City would have ended long ago. The martial Ning Empire would not have had the chance to send troops. Zheng Qinqi deserved to die. What should we do now? East Mountain and West Mountain, which one is the real one? Qi Yuan asked. Needless to say, we won't let either of them go. Brother and I will stay in West Mountain. You and Zijuan go to East Mountain. I will order people to assist you. Xianyuan Jie's gaze swept across the people behind him and pointed to an extraordinary young man. Xianyuan Pingji, you will lead 200 men to accompany Qi Yuan and Zijuan. Protect the two princes and bring back Qin Hao. Bring that bastard to me. I will skin him alive and pull out his bones. Yes. Xianyuan Pingji received the order and gathered 200 men. Now that Qin Hao's whereabouts had been exposed, the Xianyuan army had gathered. Let's go, your highnesses. Xianyuan Pingji gestured. Let's go. Murong Zijuan and Qi Yuan looked at each other and led their people to West Mountain. Qin Hao, you won't be able to escape tonight. Chang Helou looked at the previous captain. Lead the way. Jiutian Divine Emperor. Chapter 1370. Translator, Nyoibo Studio Editor. Nyoibo Studio. Killing Xianyuan Jie. The murderous night shrouded the land. Wisps of mist drifted away from the mountains, like wandering souls with nowhere to go. Under the moonlight, the grotesque rocks could be seen everywhere. Under the hazy moonlight, the shadows of the rocks were elongated, making them look like the incarnation of a mountain ghost. Heavy footsteps came from all around. Qin Hao, who was hiding in the dark, smiled. In order to obtain the great emperor's inheritance, nearly 1,000 cultivators had entered the mountain. Among them, there was no lack of geniuses from the 4 regions. Everyone saw him as their prey. The enemy is in the open, and I'm in the dark. I wonder who is the real prey in this hunt. Qin Hao lurked, his breathing so weak that it was almost inaudible. At this moment, his spirit seemed to have become one with Yunmeng Mountain, as if he was the master of this mountain. In the past half a month, he had already figured out the terrain of the mountain. He had 100 ways to get down the mountain safely. The simplest was to disguise himself and blend into the crowd. However, he would not leave empty-handed. Xiao Han's spirit was severely injured, and he had to return this favor 100 times over. He could not touch Xianyuan Wuying without going through the Emperor's tribulation and entering the Emperor realm. However, tonight, the descendant of the Xianyuan family, Xianyuan Jie, came to him. How could he let him live? Moreover, Chang He provoked Qin Hao time and time again, wearing out Denda's patience. When the Wan Cultivator Alliance was on the verge of destruction, he brought the sect into the formation and helped Xianyuan Wuying. Not only did Xianyuan Jie have to die, but Chang He could not be left alive either. They saw Qin Hao as their prey, and Qin Hao also saw them as his prey. He looked in the direction of Eastern Mountain. Along the way, Zhou Wudao had helped them several times and turned them into danger. However, this person was not on the same side as everyone, and it was impossible to control him. Would he betray him and join forces with others? Qin Hao could not care less. He only wanted Xianyuan Jie and Chang He to die. Qin Hao's eyes shone with a faint light. The red lotus fire qi flowed in his body. With the help of the moonlight, his vision was still much better than ordinary people. He could see the enemy's footsteps through the leaves in front of him. Now was the time. He took out the archer's silver bow and nocked an arrow silently. The arrow on the bowstring was very crude, carved from the branches of old trees in the forest. Although it was not as strong as the arrows made by craftsmen, they could not use vital qi in Emperor Fall Bay. Martial artists were only slightly stronger than normal people. With Qin Hao's wrist strength, it was enough to kill them. Whoosh! Whoosh! A string of arrows flew out, piercing through the air, and falling into the mountain search team 100 meters away. At this moment, blood splattered everywhere. A sharp branch had pierced through the throats of the 5 Xianyuan family soldiers. The powerful force that had flown over tore their throats apart. Before the 5 of them could even scream, they had already fallen to the ground, dead. Enemy attack! The search team immediately panicked. At this moment, dozens of powerful people locked their gazes in the direction where the arrows came from. They leaped over and drew their blades midway. Incomparably terrifying blade shadows slashed down. "I've been waiting for you." Qin Hao laughed coldly. He turned around and placed his hand on the hemp rope beside him. His arm suddenly pulled back and the hemp rope under his hand gave out a creaking sound. The hemp rope was tied between 2 rocks and there was a row of sharp thorns on it. As Qin Hao's hand pressed down, the thorns adjusted their angles and aimed towards the sky. His arm suddenly loosened. Space trembled as a row of densely packed black shadows whizzed towards the figure leaping in the air. Was he going to fight against close to 1,000 martial artists by himself? No, Qin Hao was not alone. Every rock, every tree, and even every thorn and pond were Qin Hao's strongest soldiers. They would devour the enemies in front of them. After entering the mountain, their fates would be controlled by Qin Hao. Danger! When the people in the air saw this, they let out a series of exclamations. They waved their swords and sabers, and a series of crackling sounds could be heard in the air. Many of the thorns that were flying towards them were broken, but a few still hit their targets. In the air, several figures were pierced through and nailed to the ground. Despicable! Shameless! Glancing at the few people who had died, many experts of the Xianyuan family were enraged. Immediately after, they raised their blades and continued to chase. When they arrived at the location of the attack, there was no trace of Qin Hao. There was only a hemp rope left. Cunning bastard! A warrior slashed at the hemp rope and cut it in half. Before they even met, there were already people dying in the group. Those who had made it to the fallen Emperor Bei alive were all elites of the Xianyuan family. Qin Hao was truly despicable. However, after that slash, although the hemp rope was cut, the attacker was also dead. 2 huge rocks were pulled by the force and suddenly squeezed in the middle. That person was not prepared at all. He was stunned for a moment and was squeezed into a bloody pulp. Shio 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 shio, another string of arrows rained down. Instantly, a few more figures fell. Turning around, Qin Hao once again increased the distance between them, heading to the next bathing ground. Half an hour later. Looking at the dozens of people who had sunk into the pond and were swallowed by the mud, Xian Yuanjie was so angry that his eyelids were twitching. Useless. More than 300 people chased after one person. Not only did they not catch him, but more than 70 people died. Are you all useless? Your Highness, Qin Hao is really cunning. He set up many traps in this mountain and deliberately lured us in. We are not familiar with the terrain and have to rely on feeling our way forward. This is very disadvantageous for us, someone replied. It was not that they did not work hard, but Qin Hao was too sinister. He had sprinkled leaves in this pond in advance. Who knew that there would be mud under the leaves that could not be used? Once people fell in, they could not get out at all. The more they struggled, the faster they sank. There was also a mountain path that they had passed by earlier. Suddenly, a bunch of thorns and a big rock fell down. In addition, Qin Hao had also hung his white robe beside the trap. When the people searching the mountain approached, the ground under their feet collapsed, causing them to fall into the pit. The bottom of the pit was filled with sharpened bamboo. When they fell in, they were immediately pierced through. The loss was too great. Everyone only focused on Qin Hao and ignored the horror of this mountain. Now, Qin Hao had led them all over the West Mountain in exchange for more than 70 lives. And this loss would probably continue. Royal brother, I am worried that Qin Hao's injury is fake. Chang Helo's eyes flashed. If Qin Hao was really injured, how could he have the energy to set up so many traps? Moreover, he led everyone to run around the mountain. Even those who were not injured could not keep up. You mean, he deliberately led us here to get rid of us? Xian Yuanjie said. What great courage, too arrogant. It's not too late to retreat now. However, if we retreat now, we will become the biggest joke in fallen Emperor Bei. Even if we become disciples of the Divine Palace, I am afraid we will become a laughingstock. Chang Helo looked in the direction of the top of the mountain. He could not see clearly. The night of Yunmeng Mountain was like the mouth of a beast that swallowed living creatures. The white fog floating in the mountains was like dead souls, giving people a chilling feeling. Laughingstock? I want to see who is the real laughingstock. Let's continue. Xian Yuanjie pushed the people beside him away and stepped in first. He would never retreat. Qin Hao alone wanted to destroy all the talents of the Xian Yuan family. He must pay the price for his arrogance. There were many juniors of the family who came with this trip, a total of 5,000. In the inland sea, they suffered heavy losses. More than 4,000 people were buried at the bottom of the sea. Even so, there were still nearly 700 people left in Xian Yuanjie's hands. 700 people could not kill Qin Hao? Ridiculous. Royal brother, I did not say that I would give up the chase, but we can't be so blind and let Qin Hao lead us by the nose. That would be too passive. Maybe we should consider sending people down the mountain to capture the people of the Sea Sand Gang and threaten Qin Hao to show up. Qin Hao had the guts to lure them here. It was obvious that he had done a lot of work behind the scenes. Chang Helo was a little uneasy. He did not know how many traps there were on the mountain. Since Sea Sand was in cahoots with Qin Hao, then he should pay for his actions. If they captured him, even if Qin Hao did not show up, he could still be a scout. This mountain is shrouded in fog, and it is difficult to tell the direction. Now that we are halfway up the mountain, if we send people down to capture Sea Sand alive, we might have to wait for a day. This day is enough for Qin Hao to set up more traps. What are you afraid of? I am not afraid. Xian Yuanjie turned around and scolded him with disdain. Royal brother, you know what Qin Hao is capable of. Back then, my sworn brother, Tang Xingqian, and royal brother Xian Yuanfeng were not his match. He arrogantly said that he would suppress the generation of the southern mountain range, and Shouwuk also nodded in agreement. Don't mention these things to me anymore. You guys are useless, so don't drag me into this. If you're afraid, then scram. Xian Yuanjie roared angrily, like a wild beast that was about to go berserk. Everyone in the southern mountain range was spreading Qin Hao's deeds, saying how amazing and outstanding he was. Therefore, they built elixir halls, and the status of elixir masters rose overnight to an unprecedented height. Everyone worshipped Dangu as the Holy Land. Why? What did Qin Hao do to deserve this? Why did everything go wrong for the Xianyuan family every time they met him? Why did he always go against the Xianyuan family? The more Xianyuan Jie thought about it, the angrier he got. He ignored the grass and all the dangers in the mountains. He hoped that danger would come quickly. When it came, it meant that Qin Hao was nearby. He wanted to catch that person and tear him apart. Crack! Xianyuan Jie did not know what he stepped on, but he felt that his legs were about to break. In the next moment, he let out an incomparably shrill cry. The mountain wind blew and the wild grass swayed. Following the swaying of the wild grass, Chang Helo, who was following behind, vaguely saw that the thing that clamped Xianyuan Jie's legs was a pair of beast traps with teeth marks. This thing was used to capture prey and wild beasts. It actually, "Royal brother, don't move," Chang Helo hurriedly called out. The more he struggled, the harder the beast traps were. Even so, saving Xianyuan Jie would probably cripple his legs. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, right at this moment 3 cold glows shot out from the front. They were incomparably fast, bringing with them a terrifying tearing sound. The 3 cold glows split into 3 different paths, aiming at Xianyuan Jie's forehead, throat, and heart. These 3 arrows were not rough tree branches, but rather the silver arrows that came with the Sagittarius Palace armor. It was clear that Qin Hao was determined to kill Xianyuan Jie. "You dog, come out for me!" Xianyuan Jie shouted in a hoarse voice. His angry hoarse voice filled the night sky. He did not listen to Chang Helo's advice at all. He was about to be driven crazy by Qin Hao. Of course he had to struggle. If he did not move, he would die. The silver arrows shot out and reflected in Xianyuan Jie's eyes. The sharp arrows became bigger and bigger. At this moment the scene seemed to slow down. Countless Xianyuan family experts rushed over to save him, but how could they be faster than Qin Hao's wrist strength? Normally, facing this kind of attack, Xianyuan Jie would not be afraid. He had a strong gravity source spirit that could limit the speed of the arrows. But at this moment, he could not use his Yuan Qi, nor could he use his soul power. He could only watch as the arrows shot towards him. For the first time, the shadow of death appeared in his heart. His heart was filled with fear. He was a little regretful. He had indeed underestimated Qin Hao. The arrows were like the fangs of a beast, about to swallow him whole. He had never thought that arrows could be so terrifying. However, Chang Helo was right behind him. The 2 of them were only 3 steps away. The other members of the family might not be able to save him in time, but if his sworn brother was willing to help, even if it was just a little bit, Xianyuan Jie would definitely be able to survive. Chang Helo would probably do that. After all, the family had given him everything. His title as a prince, cultivation resources, and even his future path. The family had paved the way for him. He could reach a height that normal people could not reach. Xianyuan Jie did not ask for the other party to block the arrows with his body. He just wanted to help him a little. Such a small reward, to Chang Helo, was as easy as lifting a finger. Poochie! The arrows pierced through his body, cold and merciless. Xianyuan Jie's thoughts stopped here. He used his last breath and turned around in a daze. He saw an excited face. This face was very handsome, snow-white hair flying in the wind. He was extraordinary. He had once complimented him and called him royal brother. But at this moment it was incomparably ugly. "If you don't die, I will always be an outsider in the Xianyuan family." Chang Helo gave a devilish grin. Because of his excitement, his eyes seemed to be about to pop out. His hands tightened around Xianyuan Jie's body, holding him firmly in place. The 3 arrows accurately pierced through Xianyuan Jie's 3 major vital points. When the endless darkness came, At this moment before his death, Xianyuan Jie suddenly realized how laughable Xianyuan Wuying was. Education 123 Literature Network. Chapter 1371. Meddling Too Much. Eastern Mountain. Murong Zijuan and Qi Yuan were chasing after the other Qin Hao. Xianyuan Pingji was ordered by Xianyuan Jie to lead 200 people to protect the two and ensure their safety. The group didn't encounter any danger along the way. Zhou Wudao, who was disguised as Qin Hao, didn't attack anyone. He only led people in circles to wear down the other party's stamina. Just like Qin Hao, Zhou Wudao had also grasped the terrain of Eastern Mountain. His foundation was at the second layer of the monarch realm, so his stamina was superior to others. Although he didn't attack, it wasn't easy for 200 people to catch him. We can't go on like this. He doesn't seem to be injured at all. If we continue chasing, our people won't be able to hold on. Qi Yuan leaned on a three-pronged tree and gasped for breath. This was the third time he saw the tree in front of him. It was obvious that the group was being toyed with by Qin Hao during the chase. Murong Zijuan had sensed it a long time ago and no longer believed that Qin Hao was injured. Perhaps the news that Hai Sha released was a lie from the beginning. But so what? They had 300 people here. Could they not stop one Qin Hao? Murong Zijuan couldn't give up. Qi Yuan looked at Murong Zijuan with a firm gaze. He knew it was hard to convince him, but there were some words in his heart that he had to say. Qi Yuan said, Jingyue was captured by Xianyuan Wuying and her spiritual sense was almost erased. Could you bear it? What are you trying to say? The Xianyuan family isn't our friend. They should be our enemy. Murong Zijuan smiled mockingly. He knew what Qi Yuan was planning. I don't want to quarrel with you. I just want to tell you that there was a time when we pursued Jingyue together. Do you remember what promise we made to her? Promise? If it's a promise that has lost its meaning, is there a need to keep it? Murong Zijuan. Qi Yuan roared and said with a sharp gaze, You killed Qin Hao in a fit of anger. Don't you think it's laughable compared to Jingyue's safety? Xiao Han followed Qin Hao into the inland sea. Out of the group, only Qin Hao was left, but Xiao Han and the others were nowhere to be seen. How could Qi Yuan not worry? He didn't rule out the possibility that Xiao Han was in danger. What he should do now was to go down the mountain and search for him as soon as possible. He should take advantage of the fact that there were many people and warriors gathered in Yunmeng Mountain. As long as there was still a glimmer of hope, he should give it a try instead of going around in circles. A person should live a magnanimous life. Since you and I are emperors, we should know how to be tolerant. How can we trust the world if we go back on our words? I don't care if you killed Qin Hao, but don't forget that there was a time when you liked a girl so much. Now that she needs help, can't you put down the resentment in your heart and help her a little? Qi Yuan stared at Murong Zijuan. Give up and follow me down the mountain to find Jingyue. Don't pretend to be a gentleman in front of me. You can go if you want. Tonight, no one can stop me from killing Qin Hao. Since that girl is heartless, why do you have to be so cheap for her? You are the most prestigious prince in the Deqi kingdom. Do you still have any dignity as a man? Murong Zijuan slapped Qi Yuan's hand away and turned his back, no longer looking at him. Dignity as a man? If I can't protect the people I care about, I don't care about dignity. I only ask you one thing, are you going down the mountain or not? Qi Yuan made the final decision. Brother Pingji, let's go. Murong Zijuan walked away coldly. Haha, let's not meet again, Prince Qi Yuan. Xianyuan Pingji led his men and chased after them. When he passed by Qi Yuan, he sneered. Qi Yuan actually left the alliance for a woman, and even plotted against Murong Zijuan. Qi Yuan would definitely regret his actions tonight for the rest of his life. Haha, good luck to you all. Looking at their backs, Qi Yuan returned the salute. He knew that if he left the mountain tonight, he would be facing Murong Zijuan, Chang Heluo, and Xianyuan Jie in the future. They would be enemies and not friends. Your Highness, are we really going down the mountain? A young man from the Qi clan asked, looking worried. How could Xianyuan Jie allow them to leave like this? It would be fine if they didn't enter the Divine Palace, but if they did, they wouldn't have a good life in the future. Moreover, Northern Qi and Daliao had become enemies. The armies of the two countries were confronting each other at the border, and war could break out at any time. Qi Yuan even secretly helped the princess of Daliao. I only want to have no regrets. If I don't see Jingyue for the last time, I won't be at ease in this life. Let's go. The group that was originally going the same way eventually went in the opposite direction. Qi Yuan and Murong Zijuan went in different directions. One went in, the other went down the mountain. Brother Pingji, you won't leave me too, right? Murong Zijuan looked back and saw that Qi Yuan had left with his people. Xianyuan Pingji was very comfortable with this sentence. After all, he was lower in status than Murong Zijuan. He smiled and said, Your Highness Zijuan, what are you talking about? Qin Hao killed a direct descendant of the royal family. The members of the Xianyuan clan hate him to the bone. How can I disobey Your Highness Jie's order? Murong Zijuan nodded in relief. If he was alone and the incompetent disciples of the Zhanyue mansion behind him, he was afraid that he wouldn't beat Qin Hao's opponent. The Xianyuan clan was quite loyal. He had to thank Xianyuan Jie later. But he didn't know that Xianyuan Jie was no longer in this world. Thousands of miles away from the inland sea, the southern proud empire, in the grand palace of the crown prince, Xianyuan Wuba's shirtless and strong body was soaking in a medicinal pool. In the Battle of Feng City, he was ambushed by Ning Kong, Ning Lai, and City Lord Ning, and was badly injured. Later, his clansmen risked their lives to steal him. With the universe divine earth, his damaged body recovered quickly. But the injury of the Emperor intent left by the 3 Emperor Realm Masters wasn't so easy to remove. At this moment, the medicinal pool was emitting green gas. Lightning flashed on the surface of the water, constantly refining Xianyuan Wuba's new body. The medicinal power was absorbed through his pores and merged into his blood and spirit, constantly weakening the remaining Emperor intent. Suddenly, the door of the medicinal hall was smashed open, and several elders barged in. Fifth Old Ancestor, what's the matter? Xianyuan Wuba opened his eyes. His square face was filled with endless majesty. In the past, the southern proud great emperor didn't care about the clan's affairs, and even the empire's important affairs were all left to Xianyuan Wuba. Obviously, Xianyuan Gaoyan was ready to pass on the throne. But now, Xianyuan Wuba was seriously injured. No matter how serious the matter was, he shouldn't have come to disturb him. He should have gone to Xianyuan Wuying. Wuba Jie is in trouble. An elder walked forward and approached the medicinal pool. He took out a life slip with his trembling hand. This noble purple-gold life slip was engraved with Xianyuan Jie's name. Now, the life slip was shattered. Xianyuan Wuba's face was flushed, and he spat out a mouthful of blood into the medicinal pool. Because of his agitation, his body was trembling. Jie! Murmuring, Xianyuan Wuba slowly reached out and took Xianyuan Jie's life slip from the elder's hand. Those who became emperors had to be emotionless. If one wanted to become emperors, they had to first put aside worldly feelings and cut off worldly thoughts. Without any attachments, they would have no weaknesses. But who could truly be emotionless? Even the ambitious and ruthless Xianyuan Wuba couldn't help but lose control of his emotions when faced with the news of his favorite son's death. At this moment, no one spoke. The elders silently left the hall, leaving Xianyuan Wuba alone. The opening of the Divine Palace attracted thousands of geniuses from the continent to gather in the southern region to fight for the opportunity of becoming a 9-star great emperor. Xianyuan Jie stepped onto the battle platform and led 5,000 family elites across the sea. Now, in less than 3 months, the life slip was shattered. How could anyone accept this? A total of 5,000 people, all of them young geniuses, accompanied by people from the spiritual beast sect to befriend the descendants of the 2 great empires of the northern borderline. With such a lineup, how could Xianyuan Jie die? Could it be that Changhe Lo, Murong Zijuan, Qiyuan, and those 5,000 people were all dead? Rumor had it that the death rate of the Divine Palace was 100%, and the curse had continued to this day, unable to be broken. At first, Xianyuan Wuba didn't believe it, but now, he had to. Although you're not the smartest of all my children, you're the most talented. Although your temperament is poor, you can still be trained. But if your talent is weak, it can't be made up for. Xianyuan Wuba closed his eyes, holding the shattered life slip tightly with a pained expression. In terms of intelligence and scheming, Xianyuan Jie wasn't outstanding, but he had inherited Xianyuan Wuba's arrogance and bravery. In comparison, Xianyuan Wuba preferred the straightforward Xianyuan Jie. Unfortunately, Xianyuan Jie didn't have the same fate as Xianyuan Wuba and couldn't become the crown prince. Come, change my clothes. Xianyuan Wuba opened his eyes, exuding an even more domineering aura. Accompanied by a group of palace maids, he stepped out of the medicinal pool, dressed neatly, and went to the clan hall. The clan hall stored the life slips of all the family members, including Changhe Lo. He wanted to see if Changhe Lo's life slip was also shattered, and if the 5,000 family members who left with him were all dead. Fallen Emperor Bei, West Mountain. Xianyuan Jie fell to the ground, and all the Xianyuan family members present were stunned, their eyes filled with disbelief. Xianyuan Wuba's favorite youngest son was dead, and it was hard to imagine how furious the crown prince of Southern Pride must be. Changhe Lo hugged Xianyuan Jie's body, his eyes filled with tears, drop by drop. "I'm sorry, royal brother, I was one step behind, I'm sorry." He lowered his head, his voice filled with sobs. But no one saw that under his face, the corners of his mouth were full of smiles. He entered Southern Pride, and although he took everything from Xianyuan Feng, in the hearts of the Xianyuan family, he was still an outsider. He was just lucky to be chosen by Xianyuan Wuying and adopted as his son. To put it bluntly, Changhe Lo was just a substitute. Especially in the eyes of Xianyuan Wuba, a substitute like him was not recognized at all. How could Changhe Lo's lowly bloodline compare to the nobility of the Xianyuan royal family? If not for his relationship with Xianyuan Wuying, Changhe Lo would have been coaxed out long ago. But now it was different. The 2 most talented descendants of Southern Pride were both dead, and Xianyuan Wuba seemed to be very cold to his other children. In this way, Changhe Lo finally got the chance to enter the core of the family. This core was the true core, a great position to compete for the throne and rule the entire Southern Pride. He could imagine that if he left the Divine Palace alive, even if he could not cultivate to become a great emperor, even if he stepped into the weakest emperor realm, he would still be valued by Xianyuan Wuba. What he would replace was everything that Xianyuan Jie should have enjoyed. What a wonderful life, what a wonderful feeling. Changhe Lo, I'll kill you. Just as Changhe Lo was immersed in his dream, an angry roar sounded, and in the crowd, a member of the Xianyuan family pulled out his sword and stabbed forward. Did he really think everyone was stupid? Did he really think no one saw what just happened? Changhe Lo was not saving people, but helping Qin Hao kill people. Moreover, the one he killed was the first prince of the Xianyuan family with the supreme bloodline. Puchi. A sword pierced through the chest, but it was not Changhe Lo who died, but the member of the Xianyuan family who attacked. He turned his head and looked at the person who attacked him with a face full of pain. It was Xianyuan Di, the guy who was kicked by Haisha and was severely injured. Why? As a descendant of the Xianyuan family, he could not understand. You're meddling too much. Puchi. Xianyuan Di pulled out his sword ruthlessly, coldly watching his clansmen fall to the ground and die. 9 Heaven's Divine Emperor. Chapter 1372. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. The true prodigy. The moonlight was like ice, sprinkling some coldness, and the atmosphere was silent. At this time, the younger generation of the Xianyuan clan focused on Xianyuan Di. Some were puzzled, but more were furious. Xianyuan Jie was stubborn and was unfortunately trapped in the beast trap. Everyone wanted to save him, but it was too late, and he was killed by Qin Hao. In fact, it was not their fault. But Xianyuan Di actually killed his own clan at this time. This was an unforgivable crime. Xianyuan Di, you need to explain to us. Someone stepped out with a cold gaze. Then, more than 20 figures stepped out at the same time, surrounding Xianyuan Di. These people were all young lords of the Southern Proud Empire. Many of them had the hope of inheriting their father's business in the future, guarding a region and becoming a duke who assisted the emperor. Their relationship with Xianyuan Jie was very subtle, just like the relationship between the current city lords of the Southern Proud Empire and Xianyuan Wuba. In their eyes, Xianyuan Jie was the future emperor. Xianyuan Di lowered his head, the hand holding the sword trembling slightly. The blood dripping from the sword came from his own clan. At this time, he was very conflicted. Fear, regret, self-blame, guilt, and madness. The moment he attacked, he felt like he was possessed by a demon, and his thoughts were out of control. But he knew that was what he wanted to do. Does Xianyuan Jie not deserve to die? After a long time, Xianyuan Di finally gathered his courage and spoke to all his clan members. Hearing this, Chang Helou's lips slowly curled up. "How dare you?" someone shouted angrily. This was simply disgraceful. Looking at that person, Xianyuan Di laughed maniacally. "Brothers and sisters, as subjects, it is our honor and responsibility to fight for our king. But Xianyuan Jie is not worthy. He is the crown prince. We should respect him and serve him. But when has he ever seen us as humans? In his eyes, we are just chess pieces that he can discard whenever he wants." Xianyuan Liang and Xianyuan Gu, who died in the hands of Haisha, are the best examples. I am also. If he does not die in the future, all of you will suffer the same fate as me. Thinking back to the battle at the foot of the mountain, Xianyuan Jie was so cold. After confirming that Qin Hao was on the mountain, he immediately went up the mountain, not even burying the bodies of Xianyuan Gu and Xianyuan Liang. The poor warriors who fought for him, their souls did not get a home, and did not even Xianyuan Jie's. They were humans, humans of flesh and blood. Although their status was not as high as Xianyuan Jie's, they were still loved by their parents at home, protected by their elders, and treated as treasures. Xianyuan Di smiled bleakly. If the ruler wants the subject to die, the subject has no choice but to die. We have been cultivating since we were young for the sake of the entire race. I, Xianyuan Di, am not afraid of death. I am afraid of dying without dignity. If the sacrifice is meaningless, I don't mind not being a subject. If you all think that I deserve to die, then kill me. It is worth it to use my life to wake everyone up. After Xianyuan Di finished his heartfelt words, he threw his sword down and closed his eyes. The signs of this trip were like a nightmare. 5,000 elites of the family were sent out, and in one night, more than 4,000 people died in the internal sea, all for Xianyuan Jie. Everyone was silent. Xianyuan Di said what everyone was thinking. In their hearts, they also had the same idea. In order to protect Xianyuan Jie and become a disciple of the Divine Palace, they were all chess pieces, fighting for the crown prince. They accepted their fate, but Xianyuan Jie was arrogant, heartless, and cold-blooded. He was not worthy of their lives. He was stubborn, and in the end, he deserved it. Everyone, can you listen to me? Chang Helou stood up, wiped the tears from the corner of his eyes, and looked at everyone. Everyone stared at him with red eyes, But Chang Hello was not afraid at all. He said, I know that many of you look down on me, and think that I am not worthy of the position I have today. I will not explain. But as Xianyuan Di said, if Xianyuan Jie does not die, none of us will have a good ending. Stepping onto the battle platform, entering the divine palace, and becoming a 9-star great emperor are not Xianyuan Jie's dreams alone. You should not only fight for his dreams. Think about yourselves. Once you step into the 9-star great emperor level, you can do whatever you want on the continent. At that time, even your parents will be proud of you. Even in the face of His Majesty Xianyuan Gaoyan, he will be respectful to you. Of course, it is not easy to reach the 9-star great emperor level. Perhaps there will still be many people who will die in the test of the divine palace. But now, without Xianyuan Jie's shackles, we can fight for that slim chance. It may be very slim, but at least we have the power to fight. What if we succeed? If Xianyuan Jie was alive, he could become an emperor alone. Now that he was dead, then everyone else had the chance to become an emperor. They had to admit that at this moment, everyone's hearts were shaken. And since Xianyuan Jie was dead, there was no point in pursuing the matter. Chang Hello, don't take us for fools. We know very well what you are thinking. I just want to say that even if His Highness Jie is dead, you will not enter the true core. After all, the surname of Southern Pride is Xianyuan. As long as one of us is still alive, you will never have a chance, a cold voice said, with a hint of threat. Of course, I know my place. Chang Hello smiled apologetically. But in his heart, he was thinking, what if all of you are dead? As this thought flashed through his mind, Chang Hello sighed. Then what do we do now? Although royal brother is dead, the murderer is still at large. You don't have to worry. We will take Qin Hao's life. Our Xianyuan family is absolutely irreconcilable with this person. Of course, you can't stay out of it. The person who spoke seemed to be quite reputable among the remaining family members. He shouted, everyone, listen up. His Highness Jie died at the hands of Qin Hao. Even if one day someone returns to Southern Pride and sees His Majesty Gaoyan, they will still say the same thing. As a member of the Xianyuan family, we should take revenge. Next, we will continue to kill Qin Hao. This will also be the last explanation to Xianyuan Jie. From now on, we will fight for ourselves. Xianyuan Di, let's go. The person who spoke patted Xianyuan Di's shoulder. Then, he led the group of martial artists up the mountain. Seeing this, the other forces in the city followed silently. The real cause of Xianyuan Jie's death would be buried in their hearts forever and become a secret. Although they felt guilty for hiding it, this shame was all thanks to Qin Hao. If they wanted to get rid of the psychological barrier in their hearts, Qin Hao had to die. Only with his death would their hearts be free. Under the crowd's encirclement, Chang Hello led the spiritual beast sect forward. Originally, they thought that with Xianyuan Jie dead, they could replace him and become the leader of the group. Now, it seemed that the elites of the Xianyuan family were not easy to subdue. Some of them had outstanding abilities. It was just that they had been oppressed by Xianyuan Jie in the past, and had not been able to shine. It was only after Xianyuan Jie's death that the outstanding people in the group could boldly display their abilities. But obviously, Chang Hello had no hope of subduing this group of people. When Xianyuan Jie was alive, everyone respected him. Now that he was dead, the huge group was divided into several groups. Fortunately, no matter how divided they were, the members of the Xianyuan family had the same goal. That was to kill Qin Hao. And this was also Chang Hello's goal. In the end, only I will win. Chang Hello laughed in his heart. Abandoning the West Mountain, Qin Hao did not have time to collect the 3 arrows. Once he was surrounded, he would definitely not be able to escape. Thinking about the arrows he had left behind, he felt that it was a pity. Chang Hello is such a beast. As he ran, Qin Hao cursed. He also saw Chang Hello holding Xianyuan Jie's body, which led to his death. Xianyuan Wuying had taken in an ingrate. But to Qin Hao there was no harm in killing Xianyuan Jie. Although he did not feel very happy, perhaps he would feel satisfied when he killed Chang Helou and Xianyuan Wuying with his own hands. Calculating the time, Zhou Wudao should have brought another group of people to the peak. Now Qin Hao did not have time to stay. According to the plan, he would delay in the West Mountain for a while, then go to the peak to meet up with Zhou Wudao, and work together to kill the enemies from the East Mountain. As for the West Mountain, even if Qin Hao was not there, the traps left behind would be enough to keep the remaining members of the Xianyuan family busy for a while. By the time they came out of the West Mountain, the battle on the peak would be over, and then he would get rid of the people in the West Mountain. Of course, this was only Qin Hao's plan. The actual implementation might not be too smooth. At the very least, Qin Hao was being watched by some people. Although he could not see where the enemy was, he knew that since he appeared, there were people watching him in the dark. And there was more than one person. Qin Hao felt several dangerous auras. These auras were not inferior to Showuks. They should be the most outstanding among all the signs. As for why they did not attack, it was most likely because they were afraid of the Xianyuan family. After all, there were too many people in the Xianyuan family. Once they fought with Qin Hao, they would be wiped out by the warriors of the Xianyuan family. Looks like I can't wait for Zhou Wudao to come. Qin Hao stopped. His long hair fluttered in the wind, and he stared ahead. He saw a few figures standing on top of a cliff in front of him, blocking the path to the top of the mountain. Now that Qin Hao had left the West Mountain, the Xianyuan family's team was left far behind. The strongest group of the signs no longer had any scruples and finally could not help but attack. Feng Qianli of the Tianju Sword Palace is here to meet you. One of the three figures on the cliff spoke. His voice was as sharp as a sword. Tianju Sword Palace, from the East Continent. Qin Hao said in awe. He knew that the Tianju Sword Palace in the East Continent was a famous holy land of the sword, and their disciples were very strong. No wonder my trap was useless against you. Looks like it has been seen through. The successor of the Tianju Sword Emperor in the East Continent is indeed extraordinary. Qin Hao replied. Feng Qianli was slightly stunned. He did not expect that the other party would know the name of the Sword Palace, and even know of the godlike Sword Emperor. Insignificant skill. It is not only the Sword Palace that has seen through it. Suddenly, another voice was heard. The voice was deep and rough. Qin Hao looked in the direction of the voice. He found that on a big tree 20 meters to his left, there were 4 people standing on the tree crown. Although they could not use their yuan qi, the 4 of them stood against the wind, as if they were walking on flat ground. Their weight did not break the fragile branches under their feet. East Continent's Lei Chuan, from the Judgment Hall. We are here to meet you. Among them, a strong young leader spoke. East Continent's Lei Chuan Empire, the successor of the Holy Light Double Emperors. Qin Hao was quite surprised. The Lei Chuan Empire did not have royal authority, only the patriarchal authority. The sect that led the empire was called the Judgment Hall. In the sect, there was a pair of great emperors who were extremely proficient in the power of light. One cultivated the physical body, the other cultivated yuan qi. Now, among the 4 disciples of the Judgment Hall on the tree crown, 2 of them were extremely tall and strong. One could tell at a glance that their bodies were very strong. The other 2 were handsome and full of energy. Obviously, these 4 disciples had inherited the true teachings of the 2 great emperors. Heaven's Cliff. We are here to meet you. Ghost Barren Country. We are here to meet you. Shuiyao Holy Country. We are here to meet you. Before Qin Hao could calm down, figures appeared from the dark. The various forces surrounded Qin Hao like a trapped beast. Jiutian Divine Emperor. Chapter 1373. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Dragging someone down. Qin Hao had the great emperor's inheritance, and the news was widely spread in fallen Emperor Bei. It would definitely attract the attention of others. Those who dared to make a move were naturally not mediocre people. And this group of uninvited guests in front of him were definitely the most powerful ones among all the candidates. Now they were all here for the inheritance and the Empyrean artifact. Heaven's Cliffs, Ghost Wilderness Nation, Water Jade Holy Empire. Those who weren't from the East Continent might not know about them, but Qin Hao was Dendi of the East Continent in his previous life, so he was naturally familiar with them. Heaven's Cliffs was a powerful sect on the islands of the East Continent. Qin Hao didn't know much about them. He only knew that the sect was built on an ice island, and their cultivation attribute seemed to be related to ice. When Fengqing stepped onto the 100 battle platform, Emperor Yuan from Heaven's Cliffs questioned Granny Ying. As for the Ghost Wilderness Nation and the Water Jade Holy Empire, he was more familiar with them. The martial artists of the Ghost Wilderness Nation cultivated dark attribute technique. They were agile and ruthless, and it was hard to see them when they fought. They were good at assassination. More than 90% of the famous assassins in the East Continent came from the Ghost Wilderness Nation. It was rumored that as long as the Ghost Wilderness Nation's martial artists were still alive, they still had enough ability to kill their target. It could be said that they had truly reached the level of killing with one strike. At this time, 3 masked men in black were blocking his way. The situation of the Water Jade Holy Empire and Shiliang Luoshui was a bit similar. In the Empire, both men and women cultivated water attribute techniques, especially women who were extremely beautiful. In front of Qin Hao were 3 beautiful women. The difference was that the status of women in the Water Jade Holy Empire was higher than that of men. Qin Hao wouldn't underestimate the other party just because they were women. The situation was a bit troublesome. 3 from the Water Jade Holy Empire, 3 from the Ghost Wilderness Nation, and 2 from the Heaven's Cliff. In addition, there were the 4 people from the Judgment Hall and the 3 sword cultivators from the Tianjue sword sect. There were a total of 15 powerful opponents, each of them outstanding and definitely ranked at the forefront of all the candidates. And the feeling that Qin Hao from the feeling of the person leading the team, he was not inferior to Shouwuk at all. In addition, there was also an unknown figure blocking Qin Hao's back, cutting off his escape route. Qin Hao did not turn his head to look. He vaguely felt that the aura behind him was strangely familiar. It was as if this aura frequently appeared around him along the way. However, at this time, this aura was no longer restrained, revealing its sharpness. Although it was only one person, the sense of danger that Qin Hao felt was even stronger than that of all the cultivators present. 17 opponents. Qin Hao was a little depressed. If he had to fight head-on, he definitely wouldn't be able to win. Thinking back to his previous life, this situation was quite similar to the god Burial Valley being besieged by the 10 monarchs. However, back then, Qin Hao didn't have a primordial soul. He relied on his alchemy skills and a divine bow to shake the 8 desolaces. Currently, Qin Hao might have the power of 3 souls, but he was unable to use it in Emperor Bei. In comparison, these fellas in front of him were much more dangerous than the 10 emperors of God Burial Valley. Everyone, why are you blocking me? Qin Hao calmly swept his gaze across everyone, even though he clearly knew the reason. Why are you still asking the obvious? Hand over the inheritance and emperor weapon. The robust youth from Thunder Plains Judgment Hall spoke. His name was Lei Jiao. If the world says that you are stupid, then are you really stupid? Qin Hao looked at him with an amused gaze and asked him in return. Are you humiliating me? Lei Jiao narrowed his eyes and spoke in a deep voice. Qin Hao shook his head and said, No, I know that you are here for the inheritance and emperor weapon. The outside world says that I am injured and trapped in the mountains. However, have you ever seen me injured? Within the western mountains, Qin Hao had ambushed and killed the members of the Xian Yuan family. Everyone must have seen everything clearly. This has nothing to do with whether you have an emperor weapon or not, right? Feng Qianli laughed. Of course, it is the same problem. Ordinary people look at the surface. Everyone here is extraordinary and your state of mind should be clear. I wanted Haisha to spread the news and deliberately led people here to kill my enemies. Do you really think that I have an emperor weapon? If I said that I have a divine inheritance, would you believe me? Qin Hao laughed. Divine inheritance? Of course, no one here believed him. Since 10,000 years ago, there had been no more divine inheritance on the continent. Therefore, the four regions were collectively known as the Divine Wilderness Continent. Qin Hao saw everyone's expression and knew what they were thinking. He said, "Since you don't believe that I have a divine inheritance, why do you believe that I have an emperor inheritance? How can you confuse God and emperor?" A fairy from the Water Jade Holy Kingdom said. Her voice was delicate and extremely pleasant to the ears. Even though her tone was scolding, it still tugged at people's heartstrings. The divine inheritance was second only to the martial artists of the continent. It was too far away, like a dream that could not be chased. However, the emperor realm was different. A great emperor was a living person, not an illusion. "May I know your name?" Qin Hao looked at the woman in blue dress who spoke. "Qian Ning." The woman said, "All right," as Fairy Qian Ning said, "if I really have an emperor weapon, I will give it to you now. Do you dare to accept it?" Qin Hao said. As soon as he said that, in an instant, the experts from the Judgment Hall, Tianjua Sword Sect, Ghost Baron Kingdom, Heaven's Cliffs, and several other forces all looked at Fairy Qian Ning. Their gazes seemed to carry a terrifying power. Being stared at by everyone, Qian Ning subconsciously raised her guard. It seems that Fairy Qian Ning doesn't dare to accept it. If so, why don't you retreat early to avoid attracting trouble? Qin Hao understood that although the enemy's cultivation was not weak, the various forces were not united. The great emperor's inheritance was a hot potato. Whoever accepted it would become the next target. If the three girls from the Water Jade Holy Kingdom accepted it, what awaited them would be the killing of the various forces. "Senior sister, this kid is smart and cunning. He wants to divert the attention of others to us." Behind Fairy Qian Ning, a beautiful girl in a butterfly dress spoke. "Nine Heavens Divine Emperor." Chapter 1374. Hearing a scream, Fairy Qian Ning nodded. Qin Hao did not have good intentions, but thinking about it carefully, what he said made sense. Not to mention them, who would dare to accept it? If anyone accepted it, they would become the target of public criticism. At this time, the various factions had formed a subtle relationship. They did not dare to act rashly and were holding each other back. Qin Hao smiled as if the situation was not that bad. He looked at everyone again and said, "Just now I made a hypothesis. The truth is that I do not have an emperor artifact or inheritance. Instead of wasting time on me, why don't you all search for ruins? Perhaps there is a hidden great ruin in Fallen Emperor Bay that has a great emperor's inheritance." There were many ruins around Fallen Emperor Bay. The larger the ruin, the more valuable it was. Not only were there cultivation methods and powerful martial skills, but recently, some cultivators had even found revered artifacts and emperor artifacts. Although Qin Hao's words were not reliable, they did not eliminate the possibility. No one knows if there is an emperor artifact in the ruins, but whether you have one or not, hand over your storage ring and we will know. A voice came from behind Qin Hao. It was elegant and noble. It sounded like a woman's voice. At this time, these words pushed Qin Hao into the heart of the storm. The situation that he had worked so hard to ease began to tense up again. Qin Hao's eyes flashed and he finally turned around to face this person. In front of him, a tall figure stood. She wore men's clothes and her exquisite face was more beautiful than a woman's. She exuded a delicate feeling and stood there calmly, showing a noble temperament. Even though she was wearing men's clothes, it could not hide her beauty. Especially the mole under her eye that was like a gem. It made her facial features very recognizable. Even compared to Fairy Qianning, she was not inferior. However, the two had different temperaments. The woman in men's clothes was more heroic. It was a woman. Qin Hao stared at her and saw through her gender. When their gazes met, the woman's eyes, he seemed to have seen them somewhere before. Qingji Han also sized up Qin Hao. On the first day of coming to Fallen Emperor Bei, she thought she was the first to arrive. Unexpectedly, someone else beat her to it. Later, when she hid in the tree to observe, the first figure that caught her eye was this white-haired young man. At that time, she was curious because of Zhou Wudao's existence. Among the younger generation of the East Continent, Zhou Wudao was quite famous, so he was full of arrogance. However, Zhou Wudao, who didn't even put emotion in his eyes, seemed to be very afraid of the white-haired youth. Especially in the recent days, Han Qingji secretly followed the group and observed Qin Hao's group's every move. She increasingly discovered that Zhou Wudao had a fearful heart towards Qin Hao. Although she had to look at it several times a day today, she could finally stand in front of Qin Hao openly. That's right. Take off your interspatial ring and we'll know with a single glance. If you have an emperor weapon, it means that you also have an inheritance, said the Thunder Wrm. If this was true, Qin Hao had to stay behind. There's only one emperor weapon. My Tianju Sword Palace has never liked to fight. We're willing to fulfill the wish of others and give it to everyone. However, if this person has an emperor's inheritance, he can burn his life force to force out the inheritance power. After that, everyone can comprehend it together, okay? Feng Qianli laughed loudly. Once the inheritance entered the body, it would merge with the martial artist's mind. Unless the inheritor died, the power of the inheritance wouldn't be obtained. Only when Qin Hao willingly burned his life force would the vast emperor's inheritance appear as the power of the great Tao. After the inheritor died, the power of the inheritance wouldn't remain for long. By then, it would depend on one's ability to comprehend the most. However, in this way, Qin Hao would definitely die. The great Tao inheritance he inherited would be divided among everyone present. You talk like a benevolent person, but your actions are so vicious. As expected of the disciple of Tianju Sword Emperor. Qin Hao's eyes were cold as he stared at Feng Qianli, who was on the cliff. Tianju Sword Emperor of the East Continent was one of the murderers who tried to kill him in God Burial Valley. You flatter me, Feng Qianli said politely. Cut the crap. Do it yourself. If you let us do it, you'll die a horrible death, Lei Jiao shouted. He clenched his fists and made a terrifying sound. It was as if he could turn Qin Hao into a bloody pulp if he clenched his fists. Instantly, the martial artists from Celestial Cliffs, Ghost Region, and the three ladies from the Water Jade Holy Kingdom all took a step forward and were ready to attack. It seems like there's no way to reconcile with you. What a sad ending. Qin Hao shook his head. Once they started fighting, death and injury were inevitable. However, it was impossible for him to burn his life force. He wouldn't even hand over the interspatial ring because there was an emperor's weapon in the ring. It was a ninth-forged emperor's weapon, the divine soldier that even great emperors dreamed of. This ninth-forged emperor's weapon was given to him by Li Wanji in the Hidden Dragon's secret realm. Qin Hao had prepared it for Xiaohan. In addition, there was another divine weapon, the Great Void Divine Sword. How could he hand it over? Not to mention the strange herbs, seeds, ores, and several emperor's weapons in the ring. If they wanted his life, they could take Denda's value. There was no room for discussion. Resisting will only make you suffer. Compared to not struggling, I prefer to hear others scream. Otherwise, it's boring. one of the martial artists from Ghost Region said in a hoarse voice. The two people behind him looked at each other and silently drew their swords. The swords were thin and long, as if they were born to kill. Listening to others scream? Qin Hao was shocked. It seems that we have the same hobby. Then, he ran like a shadow and used the water wind step. Qin Hao rushed toward the three people from Ghost Region. Since he couldn't avoid this battle, he had to deal with the three assassins first. Jiutian Divine Emperor. Chapter 1375. Qianqian Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Chapter 1375. Qianqian A Dead End, You're Courting Death. Qin Hao actually had the guts to charge forward in the face of so many experts. Furthermore, he was charging in the direction of the Ghost Desolate camp. Did he think that the Ghost Desolate cultivators were the weakest among the various forces? Was he looking down on them? The three Ghost Desolate cultivators were enraged. They attacked at the same time. They would not split up and fight Qin Hao alone. Assassins did not care about fairness with their opponent. Three figures shot over. They held sharp and slender swords in their hands. Their bodies were filled with fierce killing intent. As they ran, the figures of the three assassins constantly changed, shifted positions, and overlapped with each other. It was as if they had turned into a blurry illusion. It was impossible to see through them, and it was even more impossible to determine where their swords would suddenly attack from. It was extremely dangerous. What a brilliant combination of movement technique. Qin Hao had a cautious expression. The three Ghost Desolate cultivators were more difficult to deal with than he had imagined. If it were not for the fact that he could not use his origin soul skill in Fallen Emperor Bay, they would probably be even more dangerous. However, at this moment, Qin Hao's movement technique was also extremely ghostly. He passed through the middle of the three people at an inconceivable angle. Accompanied by a series of ding-ding-dang-dang-dang sounds, everyone saw a flash of sword light. They didn't know how many sword strikes had been exchanged between the two sides. Suddenly, four figures passed by each other. They came into contact quickly and separated even faster. Midway, there was a mournful scream. After they separated, a large amount of clothing fell off Qin Hao's body. However, only his clothes were torn. He was not injured. On the contrary, the sword in Qin Hao's hand was stained with blood. It was the blood of his enemies. Furthermore, he had successfully broken through the Ghost Desolate cultivators' blockade. On the other hand, the moment the three Ghost Desolate cultivators brushed past Qin Hao, two of them seemed to have been hit by a huge force. They grunted and were sent flying. As for the last person, he suddenly stopped. A bloody hole had appeared in his chest at some point in time, and he fell to the ground. In the first exchange, two of the Ghost Desolate cultivators were injured and one died. They wanted to hear Qin Hao's scream, but in the end, one of them had died under Qin Hao's sword. Furthermore, Qin Hao had broken through their blockade. What a powerful fellow! Qingji Han saw this from behind and could not help but praise. Where do you think you're going? As the woman berated, a lady from Shui Translation, beside Thousand Ning Ferry, a woman from the Water Jade Holy Empire made. A silk ribbon flew from her palm. She like a snake dancing snake as it, and it a snake, and snake. And it wrapped translation and fairy. However, to the woman's surprise, when the silk ribbon wrapped around Qin Hao's leg, an incomparably overbearing force came from it. How could the delicate woman control it? It was as if she had tied up a wild bull. As a result, she was sent flying by Qin Hao's kick. She crashed into a tree, looking very embarrassed. I have no enmity with you. If you continue to pester me, don't blame me for being ruthless. Qin Hao's sword cut off the silk ribbon on his leg. He suddenly stepped on the ground and his body leaped high into the air. Go back. Lei Jiao let out a powerful roar. He fell from the top of the giant tree and met Qin Hao head-on. Lei Jiao's fist was incomparably fierce. Although he could not use his Yuan Qi or his source spirit, at this moment, his fist exploded with a fierce light. His fist was like a mountain shattering. Obviously, when he made his move, he was wearing something on his hand. Qin Hao changed from holding the sword with one hand to two. The martial cultivators of Lei Chuan Judgment Hall were extremely powerful. He could not be careless and used all his strength to attack. Clang! Lei Jiao's falling body was once again sent flying. The blood in his abdomen was surging. His fist was numb as if it had been electrocuted. His entire arm was about to go numb. This punch finally forced Qin Hao back to his original position. When he landed on the ground, the mountain rocks beneath his feet were unable to withstand the force of the collision between the two sides and abruptly split apart. What a strong force! Lei Jiao was quite surprised. He touched the corner of his mouth and his palm was mottled with blood. Qin Hao snorted. His throat was filled with liquid. He held his breath and swallowed it back. He frowned as he looked at Lei Jiao. Lei Jiao was tall and sturdy. The strength of his fist was not inferior to Xiaogua. Even Luo Yuliang was left in the dust. Normally, he would be an excellent opponent. However, in the current situation, Qin Hao was greatly hindered. Is there any use in struggling? A sneer came from the left. Feng Qianli walked over with the people from Sword Palace. At the same time, Celestial Cliffs, Fairy Qian Ning and the remaining two Ghost Wilderness Warriors surrounded him once again. The two Ghost Wilderness Warriors' hateful gazes could tear Qin Hao apart. I did not want to fight with you, but you forced me. Qin Hao was not afraid of the hatred in the Ghost Wilderness Warriors' eyes. He did not kill others, but others wanted to kill him. There's no point in saying more. You can end your own life. I, Lei Jiao, swear that I will not allow anyone to do anything to harm your body. I will personally create a decent grave for you. Lei Jiao's tone was calm. He was no longer as arrogant as before. Faintly, he admired Qin Hao. The meaning behind his words was obviously for the Ghost Wilderness Warriors to hear. After all, Qin Hao had killed a Ghost Wilderness Warrior. If I can survive, I also want to create a decent grave for all of you. Qin Hao shook his head and sighed. The people in front of him were not easy to deal with. He could not see the depths of those who did not fight. Lei Jiao alone was enough to hold him back for a short period of time. If he fought head-on, even though he had some confidence in killing everyone, Qin Hao would probably end up like the time when he was hunting in the northern frontier. His body would be shattered and the price would be too great. Back then, he had recuperated for a year and even got rid of these people. He might have paid an even greater price. Hearing Qin Hao's sigh, everyone understood in their hearts that the white-haired warrior had finally given up struggling. In fact, if they were to fight, he would definitely not be able to leave alive. He did not want to help the people here. Brother Lei, I feel like an old friend to you at first sight. If not for our different standpoints, perhaps we could have drank and chatted merrily in another place. How about this? Since you will not allow me to live, I will tell you my biggest secret. Come closer. Qin Hao sighed, as if he was giving his last words. When everyone was confused about the situation, they saw Qin Hao open his mouth and say something to Lei Jiao. Then, he cupped his fists and bowed deeply. The next moment, the scene suddenly changed. Qin Hao rushed out in front of the stunned Lei Jiao like a gust of wind. No one could even react. What's going on? Feng Qianli was stunned. Not only him, Lei Jiao was also stunned. How would I know? What did he say to you? At this moment, Fairy Qian Ning stared at Lei Jiao with an unfriendly gaze. How would I know what he said? It's inexplicable. Lei Jiao spread out his hands. He did not hear clearly. In fact, Qin Hao did not speak at all. At that time, Lei Jiao's thoughts could not keep up. He was still thinking about the meaning of Qin Hao's words when the other suddenly slipped away from his side. Then why did you let him go? A ghost wilderness warrior made a hoarse voice, his eyes staring at Lei Jiao with hatred. Just now, Lei Jiao seemed to have the intention to protect the white-haired warrior. No wonder. What do you mean? Do you think I am lying? Lei Jiao's footsteps subconsciously retreated. He did not want to become Qin Hao's substitute and be surrounded by everyone. Senior brother, let's go. Lei Chuan and the other 3 people of the Judgment Hall saw this and pulled Lei Jiao to the top of the mountain. Obviously, they were played by Qin Hao. If they did not catch up with the white-haired warrior, the 4 of them would be in a very dangerous situation. Lei Jiao, don't go. Stop for me and speak clearly. Heaven's Horizon, Ghost Wilderness, Feng Qianli, Fairy Qianning, and the others were not willing to give up. In their opinion, Qin Hao must have told Lei Jiao a very important secret. Otherwise, how could Lei Jiao let the white-haired warrior go? Could it be that there was more than one great emperor's inheritance, and there were other places? Qin Hao told Lei Jiao that there was another place of inheritance. In an instant, Cloud Mist Mountain became very lively. Qin Hao took the lead, his feet stepping on the water as he madly ran to the top of the mountain. Behind him, Lei Jiao and the other 3 followed closely. Behind them, a large group of people chased closely. Cunning. Qingji Han chuckled. She had already guessed that Qin Hao might really not have said anything. His purpose was to confuse everyone and deliberately cause differences between the various forces. However, the more this was the case, the more interested she was in Qin Hao. It was no wonder that he could defeat Mo Xian. In terms of adaptability, even if the 3 demon generals and Mo Xian were to combine, Qin Hao would not be the only one who could match up to them. With a chuckle, Qingji Han nimbly jumped and rushed to the top of the mountain. Lei Jiao's body is extremely tyrannical. He is wearing an emperor weapon glove on his hand. Even my great void sword can't tear it apart. If I fight head-on, even if I kill them, I will lose this body. Qin Hao stepped on the water as fast as the wind and went straight to the top of the mountain. Plans could never keep up with changes. Judging from Lei Jiao's strength, Feng Qianli and Fairy Qianning's cultivation were not much weaker. In addition, the woman in men's clothes was the biggest threat to Qin Hao. This trip was only to enter the Divine Palace. Qin Hao did not want to fight with them to the death. Unless Shou Wuk, Yi Shuihan, Xiaogua, and Qin Yun were all here, it would not be too difficult to take down Lei Jiao and the others. Otherwise, Qin Hao could not fight with this group of people by himself. Moreover, there were also Changhe Lo and Murong Zijuan's people. He could not stay here any longer. There was no chance to settle accounts with Changhe Lo tonight. He rushed to the top of the mountain to meet with Zhou Wudao and find a way to get down the mountain as soon as possible. He could not be entangled with others. Qin Hao ran all the way. In terms of speed, he had a slight advantage. When he arrived at the top of the mountain, Lei Jiao and the others were left behind by a large margin. However, the situation did not develop in a good direction. Instead, it got worse. At this time, the top of the mountain was silent. Clouds and mist were floating in the vast area. In front of him, 2 figures could be vaguely seen in the mist. The surrounding atmosphere was strange and terrifying. 100 steps away, Qin Hao had stopped. He looked at the 2 figures in front of him. One was Zhou Wudao and the other was Murong Zijuan. I have been waiting for you for a long time, Qin Hao. Murong Zijuan smiled and slowly raised his arm. Then, there was a whoosh. The mist on the top of the mountain was dispersed by a group of figures, revealing a dense and neat team. The Xianyuan family's army, the Great Yan's warriors, and the disciples of the Zhanyue mansion. There were no less than 300 people. Zhou Wudao, on the other hand, was calmly standing in the middle of the opposing team's formation. It was as if his position at this moment was natural. Chapter 1376. Friend and foe. After looking at Zhou Wudao for a moment, Qin Hao recalled the past and said, walking side by side with you, I thought you would have changed. But in the end, you still ended up standing on the opposite side. During the Emperor Martial competition, Murong Zijuan and I formed a blood alliance. We were bound by the heavenly Tao, and those who harbor disloyalty must be killed. You shouldn't have forgotten that. Zhou Wudao's voice was very calm. But don't worry, I won't join the others. If you survive until the end, I'll use the most noble method to end your life. This was Zhou Wudao's bottom line. He didn't join the others in the encirclement. Under the rules of heaven, he made the biggest concession. If Qin Hao killed Murong Zijuan in the process of fighting, then it would be heaven's will. But Zhou Wudao wouldn't be able to return to Qin Hao's side. He couldn't become enemies with Murong Zijuan. That's good, Qin Hao said indifferently as he shifted his gaze to Murong Zijuan. The others were ignored like air. You're quite confident. Do you think you can kill me? Sneered Murong Zijuan. Zhou Wudao's actions truly made him dissatisfied. He actually didn't do anything at the crucial moment. If it was a one-on-one fight, he definitely wouldn't be Qin Hao's match. Unfortunately, he was surrounded by 300 experts. Could Qin Hao surpass them and take his head? Of course I'm confident. You're prepared, but I also have a trump card. As a close ally, Zhou Wudao actually didn't tell you my trump card? Qin Hao wasn't alone. He had the dog spirit and the centaur brothers in his spatial ring. When the Southern Sea was attacked, He Huang had transformed into his true form and crushed the enemy's ship. Zhou Wudao had personally witnessed that scene. It seemed Murong Zijuan didn't know about it. Clearly, Zhou Wudao hadn't told him. Fortunately, He Huang had retained his true form and hadn't transformed back into his human form. Now that they couldn't use Yuan Qi in Fallen Emperor Bei, the centaur beast could be considered a disaster. It was enough to make Murong Zijuan's 300 experts tremble. However, at this moment, Qin Hao did not want to release the dog spirit and the centaur. Especially when he heard the sound of running behind him getting closer and closer. Qin Hao suddenly felt that Lei Jiao and the others who were chasing after him were so cute. A backup plan. Murong Zijuan was slightly stunned, and his brows knit together tightly as he looked at Zhou Wudao, and he seemed to be seeking an explanation. Zhou Wudao ignored him. However, at this moment, more than 10 figures were rushing over from the foot of the mountain. Every one of them was filled with a murderous aura, as if their entire family had been slaughtered and they had gone mad. So you have helpers on the mountain. Seeing this scene, Murong Zijuan immediately understood that Lei Jiao's group was an ambush set up by Qin Hao. In fact, at this moment, Zhou Wudao also didn't understand. Qin Hao did indeed have a hidden trump card, which was the centaur and the dog spirit. As for helpers, when they entered the mountain, there were only the 2 of them. Where did the helpers come from? Qin Hao was even more lazy to explain. He couldn't wait for Murong Zijuan to treat Lei Jiao as an ambush. As Lei Jiao, Feng Qianli, Fairy Qianning, and the others got closer and closer, the murderous aura seemed to freeze behind him. Qin Hao raised his arm and shouted, "The time has come. Brothers, don't be afraid. Charge." After saying this, Qin Hao took the lead and rushed towards the Xianyuan clan's formation. Lei Jiao and the others who were chasing after him really looked like an ambush. "Brother Pingji, I'll leave those people to you. Qin Hao will be dealt with by my men." Murong Zijuan gave a signal with his eyes. Immediately, the Yan dynasty's martial artists and the Zhanyue mansion's martial artists rushed towards Qin Hao. "Kill them all. Don't leave a single one alive." Xianyuan Pingji drew his sword and gave the cruel order to kill Lei Jiao and the others. When Lei Jiao ran over, he was also shocked by the scene in front of him. Suddenly, there was a deafening roar in front of him, and a dense crowd of people surrounded him. Could it be that he had fallen into a trap? Had he fallen into Qin Hao's trap? This person had spread the news of the great emperor's inheritance. Could it be that he had deliberately lured people here and wanted to annihilate them in one fell swoop? In fact, he wanted to eliminate his competitors in the God Palace in advance? It had to be said that this plan was extremely vicious. Senior brother, something doesn't seem right. Those people. Beside Lei Jiao, a fellow disciple from the Judgment Hall felt that the Xianyuan clan's people were somewhat familiar. They seemed to be the people who had clashed with Hai Sha at the foot of the mountain. However, these people were the ones who had really come to kill Qin Hao. Why did they want to kill them now? He couldn't care so much and didn't have time to explain. The black mass of people rushed over. The people in their hands didn't have eyes. At this moment they wanted to reason with the Xianyuan clan's people, but they wouldn't listen to them. In Xianyuan Pingji's view, Lei Jiao and the others were clearly Qin Hao's accomplices. "Get out of my way!" Lei Jiao let out a roar. Dazzling fists blasted out. Every time he punched out, a body would spurt out blood and fly backward. He also felt that the Xianyuan clan's people were familiar, but unfortunately, he didn't have the chance to explain. He could only break out of the encirclement and go down the mountain to get out of this muddy pit. However, the more Lei Jiao wanted to run, the more people rushed over. Qin Hao had committed an unforgivable crime and was the mortal enemy of the Xianyuan clan. Similarly, Lei Jiao also deserved to die. Chapter 1377. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Zhou Wudao had opened 2 palaces. Although he wasn't as strong as Qin Hao and Lei Jiao, who were experts in cultivating their physical bodies, he was definitely stronger than Murong Zijuan. The sword light slashed over with a whistling sound. However, this sword wasn't meant to stop Qin Hao. Following a loud clang, the sword slashed onto the azure dragon spear. Murong Zijuan's spear shadow was suddenly suppressed by Zhou Wudao, and the spearhead lost its direction. At this moment, Qin Hao's great void sword slashed down with a sharp light arc, and it fell onto Murong Zijuan's head. In that instant, the scene seemed to have stopped, and a line of blood flowed down from Murong Zijuan's forehead. Murong Zijuan's body trembled, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. His expression was extremely shocked, as if he never thought that Zhou Wudao would attack him. Why? What was the reason? Although he wasn't as strong as Qin Hao, if Zhou Wudao didn't catch him off guard and deflect the azure dragon spear, causing an opening in front of him, no matter how strong Qin Hao was, he wouldn't be able to kill him so easily. No one was left beside Murong Zijuan, because Zhou Wudao was beside him. He never dreamed that such a scene would happen. He and Zhou Wudao had a heavenly pact, and they were bound by the heavenly way. How dare Zhou Wudao? Are you surprised? Zhou Wudao's tone was lazy, but the expression on his face was extremely relaxed, as if he had regained his freedom. He smiled slightly, knowing that Murong Zijuan was waiting for a reply. If he didn't, he wouldn't die in peace. After ascending the mountain, I also made a heavenly pact with Qin Hao. Only by using the power of the heavenly way to balance the heavenly way and bind each other, can we resolve the disaster. Zhou Wudao sneered. How can the fate of the great Zhou Empire be tied to you? How can a sparrow under the eaves be as high as a swan? Although Murong Zijuan was the crown prince of the Great Yen and had a high status, he was too narrow-minded and short-sighted, which made it hard for others to be at ease. Zhou Wudao couldn't afford to gamble with such an unreliable ally, let alone helping him at a crucial moment. At least, Qin Hao was more reliable than Murong Zijuan, and his abilities were more convincing. Murong Zijuan was to blame. He was too self-centered and he was too selfish. He only wanted Qin Hao translation when he launched the southern mountain range. He didn't think translation. He didn't consider Zhou Wudao. If Zhou Wudao's cultivation wasn't enough, how could he have survived? He would have died in the South Sea. Translation and translation, Murong Zijuan translation. That was Zhou. Zhou Wudao, that was translation. The next time, it was translation was translation, Lin Murong translation, God translation, Murong translation, underscore translation. Translation yesterday's ambush was the first step in returning his freedom. However, establishing an alliance with Qin Hao and having the Heavenly Pact restrain the Heavenly Pact was merely a guess. Zhou Wudao wasn't confident in his heart. Therefore, he only intercepted Murong Zijuan and prevented him from counterattacking. Thus, he allowed Qin Hao to successfully kill Murong Zijuan and didn't do it himself. After all, no one knew if doing it himself would violate the Heavenly Pact. Fortunately, it worked. As the one who violated the Heavenly Covenant, he was not implicated. I hate. Murong Zijuan uttered 3 words from his throat. Blood flowed and covered his face as his body slowly collapsed. At this moment, his mind was incomparably clear. He was the crown prince of Great Yen, the future supreme emperor of Yen, the mighty lord of northern frontier, with a bright future. However, he died prematurely. He thought of Qi Yuan and the words that Qi Yuan had said to him when he went up the mountain. Now that he thought about it, every word came from the bottom of his heart. Unfortunately, at that time, he didn't even listen to a single word. All he wanted was for Qin Hao to die. Now, he had paid the price for his actions with his life. The person he wanted to kill had killed him in the end. At the last second of his life, Xiao Han's sweet face appeared in Murong Zijuan's mind. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. That's right. Once upon a time, he also loved a girl so deeply. If he could go back, he would want to go back to the past, to the days when he was jealous of Qi Yuan and Duan Ziju. Although that time was childish, it was filled with fun. Even if Xiao Han still rejected him, he would be satisfied as long as he watched silently. Unfortunately, he would never have that chance. As for Qi Yuan, he still had it. You're quite good at pretending. You have the talent to be a spy, Qin Hao said to Zhou Wudao. He lowered his head and glanced at Murong Zijuan's corpse. It was just a glance. In fact, he had never regarded Murong Zijuan as an opponent. This person had always been clinging on to him, which led to the current situation. Yes, I've taken a small step. It's a good sign. However, as long as the Great Yan's royal family is not eliminated, the heavenly covenant between me and them still exists. Zhou Wudao sighed helplessly. So it's my fault? Qin Hao shrugged his shoulders. It's obvious that you stood on the wrong side at the beginning. I didn't provoke you. Also, that clan brother of yours, Zhou Wuning, why are you making things difficult for me? The most annoying thing about you is that you attract attention. A tree that stands out in the forest will be destroyed by the wind.